And this is now a Local 12 News special report, A Life of Service. Today, the tri-state community will gather to remember the life of Colerain Township Police Officer Dale Woods.
10 days ago, Officer Woods was struck by a pickup truck while he was working a traffic accident on Colerain Avenue, and he died from his injuries last Monday.
The procession has just started, leaving Spring Grove Cemetery. It will follow Spring Grove Avenue to Mitchell, and Mitchell to Clinton Springs, then Clinton Springs to Dana, and Dana to the Xavier campus and the CINCINNATI Center. The public is welcome to line that route.
The service is scheduled for noon today. The doors at Xavier open at 11 a.m. Officer Woods was not only a police officer, but he also served as a firefighter for both Colerain Township and North College Hill. So a very large presence of police and fire personnel from across the region and around the country is expected, and you're looking at live pictures now.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Christian Hauser is outside Spring Grove Cemetery right now. And Christian, tell us, what's it like there now?
It's eerily quiet right now. The police officers from Colerain they've just completed coming out of the cemetery. I counted probably about 24 or so cruisers that made their way that were Colerain Township officers. Now we've got some some buses that are coming out with folks that are going to make their way to the CINCINNATI Center. And behind them is the Colerain Fire Department. As you just mentioned, Officer Dale Woods was not only a police officer, he also served as a firefighter for 15 years. So the fire crews are behind these buses. They'll be coming out here shortly. Coming in, I've seen officers from all over the tri-state area, from Mason, sheriff's deputies, all sorts of police departments are represented here showing their support for Officer Woods. I haven't seen any out-of-state officers yet, but again, I haven't had a chance to really get up close and see who all is a part of this. But looking down the Spring Grove Avenue, the line of officers all in a single file line going underneath the U.S. flag and then the fallen police officer flag. It's very moving. There's no one out here from the public, though, along this route. It's just the police officers and the firefighters, and there's an honor guard that is with the flags as everyone makes their way out of the cemetery. It's beautiful with the snow on the ground and the juxtaposition of the flashing lights with that crisp white snow. Continue to see fire engines making their way out, and then we've got some township vehicles as well as some tow trucks that always make sure to be a part of these processions whenever an officer is killed. It's just a sight to see. One of the tow trucks has an American flag on it that you'll be seeing here shortly. But again, if we can kind of zoom in on the flags as they've got them set up at the end of Spring Grove area, or Spring Grove in front of the cemetery, it's a wonderful tribute as everyone goes underneath of that. And we made sure to get some pictures of that for everyone. There are some Hamilton County sheriffs that are going to be making their way out once the fire crews are finished, and then some more police officers also making their way around here. In all, I'd say that there's at least 40 or 50 vehicles that are a part of this, and they continue to kind of make their way through the cemetery. Some are coming from one side, some are coming from another side. But just looking down there and seeing all these flashing lights, it truly is beautiful. Guys, back to you in the studio.
All right. Once again, that was Christian Hauser reporting from just outside of Spring Grove Cemetery.
And we'll leave these live pictures up while we bring into the conversation this morning once again to tell the story of Officer Dale Woods and better understand some of what we're seeing over the next several hours. Former Colerain Township Police Chief Dan Malloy. Dan, thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you.
Can you give us some insight on who we're seeing in the procession? And Christian, I know, mentioned that he's not seeing any out-of-state vehicles. Those folks from around the country will be at the funeral service, correct?
They are. We've seen them over the weekend. They're in from several states and around the nation, so it will be impressive. The respect that other organizations give to another fallen soul. So it's
and this is so unusual that we have a fallen service member who was a firefighter and a police officer.
Correct. To dual serve like the way Dale did, I wouldn't be surprised we see engines and fire service vehicles from also across the country.
And he actually had service, a substantial service in different police departments as well.
Correct. His North College Hill service prior to his coming over to Colerain in 2003, and he was dual serving North College Hill as a police officer and a firefighter at the same time while he was working a little bit with Colerain Fire. So he was doing it all. And then remember, he was playing golf too when this happened.
We talked about that when Dan was with us on Saturday, because one of the stops they made on that procession Saturday was at Clover Nook Country Club, where he was an avid golfer, and they hit, you know, many of his favorite spots.
Correct. And he, again, like we said, we'll say it again all day today, that the character of the man is evident in his service.
Well, he started at a very young age. He was part of the Fire Explorers program when he was just a kid with Colerain Township.
Correct.
And all the biographies of him say he had a burning desire to serve. Talk about his burning desire and his purpose.
He represented, I think, in the life of service, the fact that he was an explorer at 16, he was a firefighter at 18, and while he was learning to be the best firefighter he could be, he made a decision he wanted to serve in law enforcement, so he goes to the academy there, and then he's serving dually as well. He's serving in other communities, and he just decided, you know, he decided that the blue was appropriate for his life service in a full-time capacity, and that's when he joined us in 2003, and we've seen it for the last 16-plus years.
Did he ever talk at any time about what it is that prompted him to have this burning desire for a life of service?
No, he was more of an action than words guy. He was quiet, and you know, we shared some of that over the weekend. We gathered with other officers. He was more of a doer than a talker, and whether it was in the line of duty or it was on that golf course, he just demonstrated his actions through what he was and how he did it.
Well, in reading so much about his life and service, one story that struck me was a mother who we found, who said that he was out one day, he was just working a normal day, and her kids were playing football, and he stopped to play football with them, and she got some really nice pictures of him with the kids.
Well, you know, that's community policing in its, you know, build relationships within the community, you develop trust, and then there's somebody that thinks maybe just a little bit differently of, wow, I didn't expect that. Well, we're real human beings. We have lives, we have families. This is a job we have a passion for, and we do it with a certain excellence, and Dale represented that, and that did not surprise me. It's just cool that they got the photos and were able to post that, and we've seen it throughout the weekend, the week since Dale passed.
Yeah, because everybody's not going to realize that these kinds of vignettes will happen and that sort of thing. You know, one thing that struck me with coverage on Saturday, because of the snowstorm and everything, but yet there was a presence of people out there. Colerain is a big, spread out kind of place, but there's a strong sense of community there.
Well, again, we're 46 square miles, we're 60,000 people, but like I said Saturday, Chief Steve Kahn did a story early in the week, and he said it has an essence of Mayberry because of the relationships and the families that are in that community. The community is truly one of a strong bond, and you don't leave. And the fact that Dale committed, well, I'm going to serve in this community, it means something, and there's a lot of folks in Colerain Police and Fire that have grown up in that community and chose to serve there. And
it's really been moving to see all of the people who knew Dale Woods, but even many who didn't know Officer Dale Woods, come out and show a sign of thanks for what you guys do in law enforcement.
Well, and I think we lose that sight of that sometimes with the, you know, with what we see in the news, with the tragedies occur, and it's nice to know, and it's good. We talked about it Saturday. What does it mean to these men and women who are in the process and who are working? And it just reminds them that the good people in the world truly appreciate what they do and how dangerous that life can be, but they appreciate your service and your professionalism.
Yeah, I know that the police community itself, this is the reason why so many people coming from all over the country, you recognize how dangerous the job can be, and there's this esprit de corps. There is this brother and sisterhood that happens. So this must really warm your heart to see how not only your police brethren, but also members of the community are trying to embrace you as well.
It does, because, you know, I still live in that community. This is where we raised our family, and, you know, you spend your whole career working there and growing up there. It just makes you feel like you made the right decisions. And I'm proud of Dale because he made a decision to work in the community in which he lived, in which we grew up, and the fact of the matter is, it meant something to those folks that live there also. Yeah. It means a lot. I'm happy for his family to see that the decisions that Dale made were great ones.
Yeah.
We have several crews on the procession route. Let's talk a little bit, Dan, about these police and fire processions, because this is not something that happens in any other career. The way that police officers and firefighters are honored when they pass and when they're killed in the line of duty. Talk to me about the significance of this whole process that we'll see today.
Well, our goal we talk about the honor guard. What's its purpose? Its purpose is to honor one who loses their life, providing the ultimate sacrifice. There's a lot of things that happen in a career of an honor guard, but the reality is we're here for this event, and we want to make sure that our fallen soul is given proper recognition for the service that they put down. And that's exactly what this is. Whether it be the military or police and fire, we want to allow the community and the fellow brothers and sisters of law enforcement and fire service to have a time in which we can recognize the quality of the life as well as the quality of the work that this man did.
Yeah, and Sheila noted we have several reporters who are out on that processional, along that route. Jeff Hirsch is there right now. Jeff, tell us what you see from where you are.
Yeah, this is Dana and Clinton Springs, and the processional will be coming up Clinton Springs, going around that little traffic circle that you probably see right behind me, and then going off to Xavier University, which is not very far. There's a fire truck here. Let's take a look over there. I think you can see it. There's a fire truck here, and there's a police car. They're just blocking traffic, basically. But of course, these are police officers and firefighters, so in addition to serving the dual function of traffic control, basically, they're also here to pay their respects as well. There are a handful of spectators here. I mean, obviously, it's very, very cold. Let's take a look down there just for a second. You can see there's a mom and her daughter. Now, I talked a little bit ago, and they live nearby. And the daughter, she's all wrapped up there by mom because it's so cold. The daughter is wearing a police hat. And the daughter told me that someday she wants to be a police officer. And her mom is out here just to show the daughter what the brotherhood and sisterhood of Blue and firefighters as well is all about. So, it's a lesson. You hate to say a life and death lesson, but that's what it is. But it's a life lesson for a young child as to the togetherness, the community of police officers and firefighters, how they all come together. And this is, as has been said for the last few minutes, a dual coming together, I guess, because Officer Woods was both a police officer and another time in his career a firefighter. So when this procession comes back, I assume you will be coming back to me. We're waiting to see it coming here, and it will pass by and head over to Xavier University. So we'll send it back to you.
All right, Jeff, thank you very much. What a poignant picture, the mother and daughter.
And the fact the daughter's wearing the police hat, too. I guess...
Oh, it does. It gives you chills. I mean, you look at that and wow, thanks, Mom. I mean, thanks for allowing your daughter to, take a few moments from school and understand the seriousness and what this truly means for Dale and for his children and his family as they travel this procession and they see that will be a poignant moment and again for the officers too. That's going to stand out.
And there are many officers and their families who are with the family of Officer Dale Woods in that procession, correct?
Correct, absolutely. The families are gathered together. We saw them on Saturday joining along the procession, but the families are all the police department, fire department families, and the fellow workers are all gathered together in this procession, joining together. So they're taking care of each other today.
Yeah, and as we noted, there are police officers from across the country who are here. Many of them are starting to gather at the CINCINNATI Center right now, and our Anjanette Levy is there. Anjanette, tell us what you see.
Well, John, we're here. The CINCINNATI Center is off in the distance, and some police cars from the Dayton Police Department just started pulling in here. As you mentioned, there will be police cars from across the country here for this service. This is really a brotherhood, and anytime there is a death in the fire service or the police service, departments from around the country, they come to the area to show support for their fallen brother or sister. Now, you can see there's Clayton Police Department, Kettering Police, if you'll point over here just a little bit, Cedarville Police Department, police departments from all over Ohio coming in here right now. There are many cars that are already parked here. All of those were actually from here locally. We saw Amberley Village, UC Department of Public Safety. We also saw the Cincinnati Police Department. So they are pulling in here right now. Centerville, up in the Dayton area. trying to read some of these. Brookville from Indiana, Fairborn, that's also in the Dayton area. So the procession is starting to come in here, obviously, with all of their lights on, showing respect for Officer Woods.
Something.
It is actually really neat to see all of these vehicles coming in. You know, it's very solemn. We have Springboro, Xenia coming in as well.
It looks like there's no end to that line, Anjanette.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I was actually surprised when they first started coming in here, Sheila and John. When they first came in, I thought maybe it was just 5 police cars. Maybe they were, you know, at the very head of this or just coming in. But obviously that procession moved very quickly from Spring Grove Cemetery. And it is really a never-ending line of police cars from all over the area.
Stick with us.
And as we mentioned, there will be... Sorry.
That's okay. I was just going to say stick with us, Anjanette, because we want to keep you as part of the conversation. But I just want to ask Dan Malloy how it feels to look at that.
It's overwhelming. But I'm not surprised by it because that's just what we do. That's how we let our brothers know that we're here for them. You're going to see it, and you're going to be represented by men and women in uniform, and those vehicles and their lights. We're here, and when they look to the left and the right, they're going to know they're taken care of, and it means a lot that these men and women, these departments, these chiefs of police from these different departments said, you know what, we're going to let you go. Please go, and please make sure we're there for that family in Coleraine, and it's just it's powerful. It's true leadership.
And you have actually seen people, like most of these so far are from the greater metropolitan area, but you've seen officers from other parts of the country here as well.
Correct. We've seen folks from the Louisville metro area and even Las Vegas. So there's folks from all over the country that are going to be present today. And
that's tradition when we lay a police officer to rest, for really the entire country to come together, for not just for the family of Officer Woods, but for his police family as well.
Yes, and it's the same in the fire service. This is how we wrap our arms around each other and just let us know that we're going to make it through. It's going to be tough. This is the worst of the worst days, and it's the finality of what we're experiencing, but we're gonna be there for each other. Yeah, you're gonna be there for each other, I would think, in part because you share an understanding of just how dangerous the job can be. I mean, we just did a story this morning about an Illinois State Trooper who was on his way home from work and sees an accident, and it's just his inclination to get out and help, and he's hit and struck, and he perishes. Yeah, and it's just, and we've talked about this. Life doesn't stop. You know, the realities of the job, and while you mourn, you have to understand that this job continues to challenge us, and we have to be prepared, and we have to have our heads and think clearly, and that's the struggles and the concerns that I have for the men and women in Coleraine, because they've been so busy since Dale passed, even since the crash on the Friday. When is their grieving time? When do they get to mourn? When do they get to take a moment to pause?
And that's what they're doing today.
Yes.
That's what they'll be allowed to do today. And we talked about this a bit on Saturday. Officer Woods, it's almost like a wonderful payback that he's getting today, because he was in the honor guard.
Yes.
He paid tribute to other fallen service members, officers.
This was an honor, and again, he served with tremendous pride, and he wanted to make sure that if he stood in, he was representing. And he was part of the honor guard during the funeral service for firefighters Brian Shira and Captain Robert Brocksterman, you know, and those folks during that, they took that seriously. I mean, we wanted to make sure we honored them. So Dale, you're absolutely right about Dale. This was something he took great pride in. All right, we understand that this procession is just now passing where Jeff Hirsch was. There it is right there. And Jeff, tell us what you see.
Well, I'm just going to stand out and let you see. Right now we got Cincinnati police cars leading the procession. You can hear the siren, and I can just see a string of police cars coming coming along. And obviously it's going to be a fairly long procession. Unmarked cars, marked cars. I think we're going to have some state police coming by and other departments. And actually there, I believe, is I assume that's the hearse back there and the family. I want to reflect a little bit on things I've seen over my career. This is Coleraine Police coming now, obviously, but since I've been in Cincinnati, I've either covered or been aware of funerals for the following police and firefighters who died in the line of duty. Of course, Robin Broxman and Brian Shire from Coleraine, that was 11 years ago. And there's no chronological order to this. I just wrote this list down as I remembered it. Cliff George, Daniel Pope, Ronald Jeter, Sonny Kim, Mike Parton, Kevin Crayon, Oscar Armstrong, Darrell Garden, Philip Pence, there's the hearse, Patrick Walterman, and Brian Dooley. And I know there are more, and I apologize to the police and fire departments and families that I forgot. But those are ones that I specifically remember from covering or seeing during my career. And obviously this is a huge outpouring of sympathy, of support, of solidarity, of community by the various police departments. Obviously this looks like, I'm guessing, probably the whole Coleraine Township Police Department is here, as they should be, and I'm assuming perhaps that other police departments are covering Coleraine. But despite the community support, the police support, the brotherhood, the sisterhood, this is first and foremost a family tragedy, the Woods family, and the other families that I listed, the dozen or so or more firefighters and police officers that I just listed who died in the line of duty. And one thing I remember, I was covering one of the funerals, and we were at the service as opposed to just in the distance, but at a respectful distance. And I remember hearing this child's voice literally cry out and wailing, "I want my daddy." That has stuck with me forever, and whenever I think about one of these police funerals or fire funerals, I think about that, and it's chilling. And that's really what this is about. It's about a family. Only the family is so much bigger than the individual family, which of course suffers the most grief. But the firefighters, the police officers, the public servants, the 911 dispatchers, it's all a giant family. But of course the individual family, in this case the Woods family, but over the years those other families suffer the most. And I just keep remembering that I want my daddy. And of course that's true in any death of a person who dies young. Oh my God, that was just chilling and horrible. And every time I cover a police or fire funeral, that just runs through my mind. Right now we've got some buses coming by, and they say Coleraine Police, or they're perhaps family members or friends that are not in a uniformed police car. But the procession is just continuing. Let's take a look now as these buses go by. Let's see who's coming now. I think we've passed Coleraine probably, and now we're getting to, let's see who this is. Let's see, that is Montgomery. Then we've got Harrison. There's another Coleraine car, so obviously there's more. Here comes Coleraine Fire. And now we're seeing off in the distance, they're going to be getting closer, a bunch of fire trucks. As you know, office fire forces. So this is a dual community remembrance, police and fire. And this looks like just the continuation of Coleraine, and it's going on and on and on, snaking around this corner in this roundabout. So I think I'll just throw it back to you if you guys want to talk over this, ask me any questions, because this is going to be continuing for some time. Actually, I got one other thing I wanted to point out as we see all these fire trucks go by. When you came to me a little while ago, and I mentioned this was before the procession got here, there was a police car here blocking traffic, and there was also a Cincinnati fire truck, which this is the city of Cincinnati. And it was also sort of half doing traffic control, and I'm assuming also half just to hear and watch the processional, is Engine 9, which I believe is stationed not very far from here. Well, just a few minutes ago, they turn on their siren, they turn on their lights, and they go off on a run, whether it was fire or a medical run, I don't know. But it just shows you that despite the processionals, despite the community observance, despite the brotherhood, the firefighters, the police officers, the job goes on. And when, somebody calls 911, somebody's got to show up. And so that fire truck just took off, and they're obviously missing what this is happening, but they're out doing what all these folks want to do, or paid to do, and serve the community in doing that. Now we're seeing Cincinnati State, the college, and now we're seeing the sheriff's office come by, and we'll throw it back to you.
Jeff, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sheila Gray.
I'm Rob Braun, in for Johnny, who has done his shift for the day, and I'm going to take over for John. And it's probably time for us to take a moment and reset here.
That's
just
right.
A moment. Chief, nice to see you. If you're just joining us, the procession for Coleraine Police Officer Dale Woods has now arrived at the CINCINNATI Center.
It left Spring Grove Cemetery and it traveled to the Xavier University campus. Following the hearse carrying Officer Woods, dozens of police and fire vehicles from Coleraine Township and other departments, and they will be joined by hundreds of other police and fire vehicles and officials and workers from around the region and the nation for the procession following today's memorial service. And we want to welcome once again former Coleraine Township Police Chief Dan Malloy. When we were watching those live pictures from the standpoint where Jeff Hirsch is stationed, Dan, you were telling us a lot of those other cruisers and fire trucks had a personal connection to Officer Dale Woods.
I tell you, when you saw the Montgomery and the Harrison, and those are some of the departments that were officers that were previously working in Coleraine, and they've moved on to other points of their career, but they've come back in a time of need. And like I said, we talked about on Saturday, some of those folks have come back and helped work the shifts to cover while the Coleraine folks have been processing and preparing for today.
I have to tell you, this is an emotional moment for me. I'm sure you guys feel the same way,
Yes.
but when you see what's going on down there, it touches you. I don't care how tough you think you are.
Correct, sir.
This
You're
moment
exactly right.
really means something. It means something to me. It means something for that little girl. It means something for these folks in those cars today as well. We're going to go to the CINCINNATI Center now. I don't know if this procession has made its way that far. I know it got started a little late, about, what was it, 9:40 or so?
Yeah, it was closer to 9:35, but we have seen just a great line of police vehicles going into the CINCINNATI Center from the outside vantage point. Inside, we have Brad Underwood and Kyle Inskeep, so let's toss it to the inside of the CINCINNATI Center and see what things are looking like there. Brad and Kyle?
Yes, Sheila, good morning to you. We know the doors to the public don't officially open here at the CINCINNATI Center until 11, but for the past 15 or 20 minutes, we've been seeing officers make their way to this area. Brad was kind of jotting down some notes on the officers, where they were coming from and where they're representing. Brad, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and before Ann Jeanette got to see those vehicles, they came through campus here outside of us. A lot of different departments from outside the Dayton area. Piqua, Xenia, Clayton, also Centerville, Spring Grove, Dayton University, Dayton Police. And we've also seen Terrace Park Fire Department truck come through campus. And just within the last few minutes, and happening right now behind us, seeing men and women in uniform making their way into CINCINNATI Center.
Yeah, and one of the things that always strikes me on these very somber occasions, when you see the officers come in here, they're in their dress blues. We don't often get to see them in that uniform specifically. They do reserve that for these more formal occasions, but it always shows just how much respect and how much dignity they want to outpour today and really honor this fallen officer. So they dress up a little more than they typically would.
And that's something we're going to see all morning long. And as Mr. Malloy was talking about, these times, it is good to see the amount of respect and love, not only by men and women in law enforcement, police, fire, but the community, as we saw that little girl standing with her mom where Jeff was, and coming out to stand in the cold, in the snow, in awe and watch and pay their respects to Officer Dale Woods.
Yeah, and organizers, as you talk about the community support and the outpour, organizers are expecting a large turnout for this funeral today. The CINCINNATI Center holds about 10,000 people. Not exactly sure how many people will be there, but throughout the last week, you've been in the community there in Coleraine talking with the people, and so many people want to be here today to pay their final respects to this officer that gave his life protecting and serving them ultimately, right?
And I think, we have to note that this is not just a funeral service for a fallen police officer, but as we've mentioned many times, that Dale Woods was a firefighter for more than a decade. So you have people from both communities here, fire and police, that are going to want to make sure that they are here to do the right thing, show the right kind of support. But yes, we've seen it all week long with the ribbons that lined Coleraine Avenue, Springdale Avenue, flags at half-staff, and even businesses that have messages on their marquees offering prayers to Officer Woods and his family. Even the YMCA on Saturday offering free daycare for people to go to the public visitation who just needed some help to take care of their kids while they went and paid their respects.
Yeah, and I think something I want to go back to Saturday with the procession. I was out there in front of the Coleraine Police Department, and to see it was freezing cold. There was snow coming down. But I talked to a woman who walked a mile with her son. She went to high school with Officer Woods. She just wanted to be there for that moment when the procession paused in front of the police department. And so it's incredible to see how so many people are rallying around just to give a very small bit of support to this family and hoping that that has an impact on them right now.
People that knew him, people that didn't. We spent time at a gas station who were making ribbons to pass out to customers. And obviously in studio we have Mr. Malloy, and he shared a story with me last week that a story I covered where Officer Woods went in and saved a woman from her burning apartment, got her out. He said that after she was released from the hospital, she called him to say thank you. And he said no one had ever done that, and called and said thank you. So just that moment between those two meant so much to her that she thought it was right to say thank you.
Yeah, and to that point, so many of the people that will be at this service today, so many of the people that will be lining the streets for this procession will have never met Officer Woods. And so I think it's incredible to see how so many people are going to come out here today who haven't met him, but you and so many of our other reporters have done a really good job this week of letting people know the man that he was, the type of father that he was, the type of friend that he was, just kind of out of an outpouring of love and support for this community, and so that people really get to know him as we pay tribute to his life.
And quickly to the man he was, Chief Denny saying he wished he had 50 of him. Speaking to the point of just how hardworking, how humble, and how professional Dale Woods approached this job.
It was interesting when I was speaking to a woman who went to high school with Officer Woods. She said he was quiet, but he loved his rock and roll. She got and so I asked her just simply, tell me about him, and she goes, he just loved rock and roll. And so it was one of those moments. There was kind of a bit of levity and kind of a bit of humor about it, and obviously such a sad moment there. But we'll send it back to you guys there in the studio here at the CINCINNATI Center as we're waiting for these doors here to officially open to the public this morning at 11, and then the actual funeral service beginning at noon.
Kyle and Brad, thank you so much. They mentioned the businesses that are supporting the people surrounding Officer Dale Woods. The Y is again going to offer free daycare today. And WEBN this morning, they knew he was a rocker, and they were playing Officer Woods' favorite music this morning on the radio in tribute. I mean, there's just no end to the tributes pouring in for him, Rob.
And it seems like a little thing, but it really means a lot to the family. You can bet on that, don't you think, Chief?
Absolutely. That was, again, it's who Dale was. Yeah. And that just makes them feel a little bit closer, and the fact that Dale still being a part of touching them, and the fact that people are expending this time and effort to either take away from work or from school or just to join them. It just lets them know that Dale truly had an impact on the communities in which he served.
Chief, you made the point that officers are coming here from all over the country, and they're gathering at an area near the CINCINNATI Center, and that's where Anjanette Levy joins us live. Tell us what's going on where you are, and first of all, where are you?
Well, Rob, the CINCINNATI Center is off in the distance, so we're actually in a parking lot behind the CINCINNATI Center facing Montgomery Road. But the procession has been coming through here. Earlier, we thought maybe that was part of the actual procession from the funeral home, but I think that was just a procession of police vehicles from Ohio. We saw police cruisers from the Dayton area, Kettering, areas like that. So we're expecting more vehicles to come through here in the next several minutes, I would think. We heard several sirens, so I think they might be getting closer. I want to step out of the way. There are also many local municipalities who have sent police cruisers and police officers' representatives to pay their respects to Officer Dale Woods. So several departments here, as I mentioned, throughout the state of Ohio. And, something I want to mention, too, this day is going to be difficult, and I'm sure the last week and a half or so has been very difficult for the family of Dale Woods. But really, the hard times are going to come in the weeks and months and years ahead as the family goes through holidays, graduations, things of that nature without him. And that's really going to be when this police family becomes very important. It's just going to be a very difficult time as they cope with this loss. Something I wanted to mention, you all were talking about rock and roll before, and you see the man in the police uniform. Last week, I saw a picture of him, Dale Woods, on Facebook, and a Colerain assistant fire chief had posted it and said, "Whenever I think of Dale Woods, I don't think of the police officer. I think of this guy. And he had kind of longer hair and a Megadeth T-shirt on, probably from, you know, the late 80s, early 90s. And it was just really touching to see, you know, the roots there, how far back he goes with people in Colerain Township, both with the fire service and the police department. So this is obviously a very somber occasion, and people coming here obviously from all over to pay their respects. Rob?
That's a very interesting point. Chief Anjanette makes a very good point. She's married to a police officer, by the way, so she knows exactly what she's talking about. But we think we know these officers when we see them. They're in their uniforms, but we really don't know the depths of their family and their connection and the support they have in doing what they do.
Well, exactly. We're just real people. We have we live the lives that everyone lives, but we have a passion and a dedication to service, and this is how we choose to carry it out. And but we still live other lives. We still spend time with our children. We still do things with our families, and we try to be as normal as we possibly can. But this service has a tendency to drive us, and you know, we shared some of the things that Dale did during his career, but he absolutely was driven to service, and the recognition and the honors that he received in the service. It just was who he was, and he is a representative of a tremendous number of men and women who choose to put the badge on.
And this is a very difficult day, not just for Officer Wood's family, but really for any family member who has someone serving as a police officer. You can speak to that, I know.
Oh, you know, now I am the father of a police officer. I have a tremendous respect for what these families feel on a daily basis. When you're serving, you don't worry about that. You respect it enough to prepare and know that the potential might happen, but you do your job, and you don't think about what it means to the loved ones you leave behind at home when the garage door, like I said, when the garage door opens and you drive out, the fear and the concern that they have. And now I absolutely respect, you know, like I said, my wife, God love her, you know, but there's so many like her that just help us and support us and help us get through a career. And now, you know, it's tough being that loved one for that firefighter or police officer.
You put your life on the line every day, but you can't afford to feel that constantly when you're trying to do your job.
No.
There's no way.
You wouldn't be able to do your job.
You wouldn't be able to, exactly right. You wouldn't be able to perform. You'd be living in fear, and that's not what the service demands.
We saw that fire truck, I think it was Engine 9 over on Clinton Springs, that had to take a call. Points out that there are others in the service today who are backing up these Colerain officers who want to come to the service, right?
You're exactly right, Rob. This is exactly the job never stops, the life never stops, the world doesn't stop turning because this moment is in time. But everyone is coming together to help make sure that it can be done with the utmost respect and the utmost professionalism. But it's tough.
Are there other departments in there? Do you know? Are they manning the stations in Colerain Township?
They have been, absolutely. Like I said, folks have been coming from all out throughout the region to help and cover beats and allow the folks to be able to prepare for today.
Well, and every time we cover one of these, it's another one too many, as Jeff Hirsch so eloquently pointed out in his long experience here in Cincinnati and what he's seen from his vantage point on Dana Avenue. Jeff?
You know, I can just hear an ambulance or I can just hear a siren going by in the distance, and it kind of stresses what we've been talking. I don't know if we'll see it come by. Oh, there it goes. There was an ambulance. There was another ambulance that came by here. And as we talked about, Engine 9 had to go on a run. And that points out, look, the job goes on. People get sick. There's traffic accidents. There's crime. Stuff happens, and somebody's got to deal with it. And every time that somebody has to deal with it, there's a potential, at least, not that often, but certainly the potential for something terrible to happen, as happened to Officer Woods. And in fact, just listening to the news this morning, 2 police officers in Birmingham, Alabama, shot. One of them was killed. And in Illinois, an Illinois state trooper stopped to deal with a traffic accident and got hit by another car. Now, that's the same similar circumstances to Dale Woods. Obviously, we don't have all the specifics, but even something like, you think, a traffic accident, you know, that's dangerous if you're out there dealing with situations. It's not just crime. It's what you think is maybe routine stuff. Nothing is routine. Everything can be potentially threatening or even life-threatening. And that's obviously what has been said all along for police officers and firefighters. Obviously, this scene is long since cleared. They've passed by off to the CINCINNATI Center. There were a handful of people here. You know, we talked about that mom who brought her daughter to show the respect that police officers and firefighters have for each other. And that little girl was wearing a police hat. And it was really very nice because the mom was saluting. I mean, she's not a police officer, but she was saluting. And the daughter was saluting to pay their respects to Officer Woods, but also, and his family, but also to the other police officers and firefighters here who were here showing their support for Officer Woods. So there's a real reservoir of, I think, public understanding of what police officers and firefighters have to do. And that was shared, you know, not by thousands of people lining it or, you know, hundreds of police officers and a big crowd at the CINCINNATI Center, which is huge. That's what it should be. But a mom and her daughter out in this terrible cold weather, and they were here for a long time. I mean, I think they're at least here probably almost an hour, waiting for the procession to go by. And so for that type of commitment by these two people, this mom trying to pass this on to this daughter as all these police cars came by and fire trucks, I think sounds kind of corny, but really that's what this is all about, I think, for the public. Not for the police officers, not for the families, but for the public to say, look, you know, we appreciate what you do for us and we respect your loss. So I think that's why those two, that mom and that daughter, were out here. Back to you.
Jeff, thanks very much. The police officers, we always think that there's something dramatic is going to cause their death, but often it's the mundane. It's another traffic accident. It's a domestic dispute. It's something that appears on the surface to be just average goings-on.
Correct, sir. Well, we saw it the morning after Dale's passing, the trooper and the Cincinnati officer, just stopping to assist a disabled motorist.
Yeah.
Crash occurs, and luckily they were able to react in time, and they jumped over the concrete barrier. We would have lost, you know, two more plus the citizen. I mean, in a moment's notice, just doing your job in service could, you know, cost you your life. And that was less than, you know, 7 hours after Dale passed. It just, it can happen at any time when you least expect it. And, you know, we don't train for, you know, let's talk about disabled motorists, or we don't train for that. We don't mentally prepare for that. We mentally prepare for those situations that might push us to a point we've never been before, i.e. deadly force. And here it is. You're just clearing an auto crash situation, and, you know, you're just going back to work, and next thing you know, you've lost your life.
Well, thankfully for them, I think their instincts kicked in because they were able to somehow foresee that car or truck was coming for them. It was unreal to see that.
I mean, God bless them that they were able to hear, or whatever had happened, to give them a moment's notice that they could jump that wall.
Right.
So, Chief, people ask me this all the time, probably you too. Why does someone want this job?
Oh, it's in your heart.
Is it? Oh,
it is, and and it's evident when you meet people that have that in here. There's, you know, you can talk to people that just tell the story, that answer the questions, but when you meet someone when it's here, oh, it's here, and it's just about them. It's an aura that they carry, and that's, again, that's representative of a lot, but that's Dale. That is Dale. It was in his heart. He was a passion. When you find someone like that, you're lucky as a community. You're lucky as a chief that there's someone that you have such a tremendous confidence in their ability to do the job, because you know they're doing the things. We talked a little bit off air about the pictures, and I love the photos of Dale on the street with the children throwing the football, because that's real work. That's letting the community know that we're with you. We're on your side. That helps build trust and develop that relationship that helps a community work in partnership with its police department. But that's not unusual for those kinds of folks, and Dale demonstrated that it was in his heart.
And he demonstrated it with younger members of the Colerain Township Police Department.
Sure.
He was quite a mentor, and he liked to advance the careers of these younger people. You said he was a quiet person who wasn't, you know, looking for accolades, but he was looking for it for others.
Oh,
wasn't
he was. If something good on his shift occurred with other officers, he wanted to make sure that command was aware of it. He was going to let you know that, hey, I'm going to let you know that my guys did this. This is what happened. Great work. And you heard Chief Strand on Saturday talk about the fact that Dale's no longer in North College Hill, but he had connections as a training officer with a lot of them, and he still had relationships with them. That is truly, I mean, that just, and Jeff said it, it warms your heart, because that's truly, you know, the man you think he was, and it truly, as stories come out, you're like, I knew it.
That's how he lives on.
Absolutely. I knew that's what Dale was about. I knew that's the kind of man he was. To hear those stories just give us peace as well. His friends, his fellow officers, it just reminds us that the man we thought he was is truly the man he was.
Yeah. And you interact with those surrounding communities to Colerain Township, too. There's a lot of interaction on a daily basis.
There is. We were surrounded by 8 communities, so there's 8 agencies that we work in cooperation with, depending on where you are assigned in that 46 square miles. But you meet them, and again, you help them, and you assist each other, and it's just, and the same with fire. You know, you're helping, and you're going in to work another fire, follow up another EMS run. It is a true partnership amongst the public safety officers.
Well, the days of honors for Officer Dale Woods began on Saturday at Spring Grove Cemetery. It will end today at Spring Grove Cemetery for his burial, and that's where Christian Hauser is this morning. Christian?
Sheila and Rob, it's all quiet along Spring Grove Avenue. Traffic is moving normally, but at the north end of the cemetery, right on Spring Grove Avenue, they still have the fire trucks set up. They have the American flag on top and then the fallen officer flag underneath of that. So each car, as it travels along here on Spring Grove Avenue, sees that, and whether they know what it's for or not, hopefully it makes them think a little bit about the men and women who put themselves and their lives on the line every day as police officers and firefighters. When I was out here on Saturday morning, the snow was coming down, the weather, it was downright miserable, cold and windy, but still about 24 folks came out to show their respects for the procession as it started here, and one man with his 2 kids came out. He was in, I believe, the Navy, and he just wanted to show them the respect that that you should show the servicemen and servicewomen that are in our community, and it's just really touching. And when the hearse drove by with the flag over Officer Woods' coffin, it really hammers home the point of that these men and women put their lives on the line on a daily basis, and you could really see the eyes of these folks as they're watching this go by tear up, and then you see the small little bus that had the family in there, and know that, you know, they're going through the worst tragedy they can possibly imagine right now. So it just really adds that I can't even find the words to describe it right now, but it's incredible to watch these folks as they come out to show their support for not only the officer and his family, but also all of the brothers and sisters of Officer Woods, and let them know that as a community, we're here for you. And we actually ended up going to Colerain High School to meet the procession there, and some folks, they brought out little flags to hand out to kids, and they said that they had to be there. They had to do that. They had to show their support for this family, and they wanted to bring the flags to let anyone who may not have thought about it to just show their support as well. And it was just truly heart-wrenching to watch these folks as they showed their support for this fallen officer. But again, everyone driving along here on Spring Grove Avenue is going underneath of this display with the fire trucks. So it's truly an impressive sight to see.
I understand what you mean, Christian, when you say that it's hard to find the words. I don't think that there are any words to express the emotion of some of those scenes that we've already looked at and what we'll see later today.
You talked about the emotion traveling in those cars. We can't see in the windows of most police cars, but you're serious when you say that those men and women are feeling it as much as we are, maybe more.
They are. Sadly, I've had the experience of traveling in those processions, and you just look forward and tears are rolling down your cheek, and I've been in the car with other officers, and it's okay, we're human, just it is what it is. Just let it go, and you're crying. I mean, I have. I don't know, and I know that there's emotion when they're seeing it, and the things that the people that they see and those expressions of respect, and they just appreciate it. They truly do appreciate the fact that people just want to say thank you to Dale.
Officer Woods left the world a better place in so many different ways. He received the life-saving award for that story that Brad Underwood mentioned when he went in and saved the blind woman from the apartment fire. But even in death, he saved lives.
Yes, as an organ donor, he was able to provide the key ingredient to extend people's lives that were suffering. And of course, why would it end any differently? Dale would make sure that people were able to live again and live a quality life because of his gift. It just doesn't surprise you. It's in knowing the man that he is. He's just a tremendous servant.
We're going to go back to the CINCINNATI Center now and see whether the procession has made its way in total to there. Brad Underwood is there with Kyle. Gentlemen?
Yeah, Rob, excuse me, I can tell you that we just got an update that the procession should be here momentarily, but as we get closer to the 11 o'clock hour when the doors are going to officially open to the public, we are seeing more officers make their way out here. Brad, you have been covering this story all week long. Being out there on the ground in Colerain, talking with people in the community, what is something that really stuck with you as they told you these stories about Officer Woods?
Well, I think we heard Christian talk a little bit about it, and also Mr. Malloy. Is just when you met Dale, we heard stories of people running into him at a gas station or at the high school, or even some of his details at Walmart. Just always said hello, always had a smile. We've seen him, the pictures playing football. Just the approachable guy, the ultimate community policing guy, and I keep touching on things that Mr. Malloy shared with me, because we had a pretty long conversation earlier this week, and you talk about the quiet leader and the trainer and the respect he had. He never bragged about himself. We tried to interview him after he rescued that woman, and it was denied, and that's okay. And I'm finding more out about him, and that's just how he is. He never wanted to talk about his accomplishments. He wanted to talk about the accomplishments of the officers he worked with, because Colerain is a very young department, and being a supervisor and an older leader there, how much he wanted to make sure they did the job like him, the right way, always staying professional and not boasting about your accomplishments, and always wanting to be better as a team, as a family, bigger than the individual.
And as you talk about the department and saying it was a young department, I know being out there on Saturday during this procession, this has really had a big impact on all of those officers that are part of that department, as should be expected. But I spoke to a mother of one of those officers, and she was brought to tears talking about how she's trying to support her son during this really difficult time. The wife of that officer was also having a really difficult time, because law enforcement is a big family. And we've seen that on display this week, and they're all trying to come to grips with this unfortunate tragedy right now. And I think that the support of the community, and I hope that the support of the community is really bringing them some comfort right now. And I believe that we actually have that interview that I did with that woman. If we could roll that right now, that'd be great. As a member of the law enforcement community, because your son is an officer, what does it mean to you when you see these people out here standing in the snow just to give a moment of respect to this fallen officer today?
Absolutely. It takes a little effort, extra effort today because of the snow and the difficulties getting out here. But I think the community has really rallied to support the police and fire and let them know just how much we appreciate everything they do for us every day.
And if you could say something to the family of Officer Woods during this really difficult time, what would you say to them?
Just my deepest sympathy in a man that gave his life serving the community, and no greater honor, really, to give your life.
Thank you so much for joining us, Kathy. I know this is an emotional time for so many people out here today, but I think it means so much for us to see all of these people lying there. And that's a word that I heard so much when I was out there on Saturday speaking with people. Everyone had their own reason for lining that procession right out on Saturday. Everyone's going to have their own reason for being here at the funeral. Many of those folks today probably will have never met Officer Woods, but I think if we talk to them, they would go back to honor and also respect.
And we heard a lot of thank you. And and in law enforcement, in the military and firefighting, that word is probably not thrown around as much as it should be to those who risk their lives every day. And we're going to see a very big turnout here because of his fire service and his police service. And I know we talked about it earlier, just the community support, as we saw blue porch lights. We saw Colerain High School light up its marquee. We saw the bowling alley. I think an oil change place, a sign place. Anywhere you went down Colerain Avenue near Springdale in that area, every business was making sure that the family, the departments knew that they're thinking about them and that they're supporting them, and they appreciate the work that the men and women do in the township.
Yeah. And I believe we may have something to show you behind us as we see some officers kind of make their way here into the CINCINNATI Center. It was probably about an hour or so ago, Brad, that we saw a lot of police cruisers come through here. All of them had their lights on. And it was just kind of a moment to take that in, to see them as they went through the campus here. Again, all of them had their lights on, and to see them come out here today to pay respects to a fallen member of their brotherhood.
Yeah, from all over. The Dayton area, we're going to see Columbus area, and as we've heard all weekend, people from out of state, all over the country are here, as many of them cruising by the venue before they meet up with the rest of the officers to join that procession to come here.
And you and I have both covered, unfortunately, these funerals before fallen officers, and for me, one of the most touching parts of them is to see oftentimes they'll have the officers all file by the casket. And it takes a long time because there are so many officers that come from all over the country to be here. I know I've covered a couple of these where I've spoken with some officers who have flown in and paid for their own flights. And I asked them, why did you do that? Because flights aren't cheap. And they said they wanted to be here to support this fallen officer's family.
There's no other place to be for many men and women in law enforcement. As Jeff was talking about earlier, this has been a rough start to the year. 6 deaths, including 3 hit at accident scenes like we have here in the case of Officer Woods. So we are going to see that brotherhood show up in a big way today.
And again, the funeral is supposed to start today at noon. The doors, though, opening at 11. The CINCINNATI Center holds about 10,000 people. We weren't expecting a large crowd. It's here for a reason, because so many people want to come out and pay their final respects to this officer.
It's going to be, as we've heard in the studio, from Rob, from Sheila, and from Dan, a very emotional day. Whether you know Officer Woods, whether you have any connection to Colerain Township, it doesn't matter. This is going to affect you in some way. Being involved in any part of this today, whether it's watching coverage on television or being here in person to see this service.
Yeah, and I'm looking here at the program for the funeral, and we're going to hear from Mark Denny, the Colerain Police Chief. Some of the Colerain Township trustees are going to be speaking. All of these people have a very personal connection to Officer Woods, so their remarks obviously are going to be very touching and obviously very moving, and it's probably very emotional for them to get up and speak during a time like this. Have you heard anything from any of these people that are going to be speaking while you're out there?
Well, we've heard from some of them at a vigil that was held on Monday night at the community center next to the police station in Colerain Township, including a retired officer, Angela Meyer, a veteran of the force and a very good friend of Officer Dale Woods. She doesn't live in the area anymore, but was back for the holidays, and then this happened, and she's staying here a little longer. And then we talked to her daughter, and she said they're living, the Woods family's living her family's worst nightmare. Every day when her mom went to work, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know whether you're going to get that call. And they're there for the family and there for Officer Woods in the department, and it's an emotional time. And we also spent time with a family, a young teenage girl who's an explorer in Colerain Township. She wants to go to the military. She wants to be a canine officer, and she was at the vigil. Now, at that time, Officer Woods hadn't passed yet, but her mother wanted her to be there to see this part of the life that she wants to become, to move into, to see all sides of this. And I thought that was very impressive for a mother and a daughter to be there to share that moment.
As you go back to that story on Monday, I just remember listening to one of the sound bites in there from a woman who, she said simply, there was no place I was going to be other than at this vigil tonight. I think I'm paraphrasing her there. But it was just so touching that she seemed to be, this was a place she had to be. She wanted to be there to offer prayers, to offer support to that family. And it seems like that has really been the message overall this week from everyone who has come out to support the family of Officer Woods during this difficult time.
And we're going to hear that a lot today, too, I imagine.
Yeah. Rob and Sheila, back to you guys there in the studio.
Gentlemen, thanks very much. The emotions just run deep for everybody and to you. Sheila doesn't talk about this very much, but she is married to a retired police officer, a state police officer. So you know exactly what we're talking about, don't we?
Absolutely. When I ask the questions about what the family goes through, Every time something like this happens, it just brings that reality home again that it could happen to the one you love.
Yeah.
And my husband's retired, but I still have a nephew in the West Virginia State Police, and I have my cousin's husband is a commander with the Columbus Police Department. There's a long police tradition in my family, actually on both sides of my family. So every time this happens, it really, you know, it hits close to home, and you feel so sad for that family, but at the same time, you're grateful that your family member was able to come home, and it's hard.
It is.
It's
hard.
very hard.
It is.
And that's the goal every day, isn't it, Chief? You just come home.
You know, you give yourself a self-talk. You know, I have the will to survive. I will survive. The power of the mind. You want to make sure that you understand that, and you do everything you possibly can, and you train and you prepare. And sometimes tragedies occur, and it didn't matter what you had and what you just because you didn't have any control over it. And sadly, that's the hard part for I think us as loved ones and family is that, man, when you don't have an answer, it's just really hard. It's really hard.
And we have another example of this huge police family that we've been seeing over the past few days.
And this officer touched so many people. And Saturday's procession passed places where Officer Woods had served, including North College Hill Police Department, where the turnout was solemn and very emotional. Chief, tell us the connection here.
Well, Dale, when he was young, that's where he started. He was, like I said, he started with Coleraine in 1990, and in that interim, he was working. As I learned, a lot of firefighters work in different departments because of part-time hours. And so Dale worked in Coleraine as well as North College Hill when he first started into the public service.
And then he went into the North College Hill Police Department from the fire department,
correct.
right? And that would start his long career of police work.
Yes, that's correct.
And it was from there to Coleraine?
Correct. He left North College Hill in 2003 and joined us in the spring of 2003.
And we're getting a very visual look at how big this police family is today as we see police officers show up at the CINCINNATI Center.
Yeah, from all over the country. That's where Anjanette Levy is live, and it looks like they're still coming in, Anjanette.
Rob, we just in the last few minutes have seen local police departments coming in here. We haven't seen any from out of town just yet, but that could be happening very soon. Behind me, just in the last few minutes, we saw police officers from the village of Cleves, Addiston. We saw some Ohio State troopers coming through. We also saw some special agents with the State Bureau of Criminal Investigation, and more officers are continuing to come through here and park in this lot that's been designated for police officers. So obviously a huge outpouring for Officer Woods. This is the family of police officers, you know, this is pretty much their worst nightmare. I hate to say that, but it's, I feel like that term is overused, but this is their worst nightmare. I think it's not something you think about from day to day. You know, a police officer goes to work, he does his job. If you think about something like this too much, I think that it would get in the way of you performing your job, but it really hits home when you see this. You understand that the loss that the family is going through and the loss that they're going to have to endure, as we mentioned earlier, for years and months to come. So we're still expecting more police officers from other parts of the state and other parts of the country to come through here, park in this lot in an effort to pay their respects to Officer Woods. But it's a pretty impressive showing thus far with that funeral service slated to get underway here in just a little while.
Anjanette, thanks very much. I assume they're causing these officers to park here because they're expecting such a large turnout at the CINCINNATI, right? They're trying to clear some space over there for people who are going to attend.
They'll also be part of the processional after the funeral, which will be quite large.
And yeah,
quite large.
And long. The processional coming from the cemetery over was not as long as I anticipated because everybody didn't take part in that. But on the return,
yes, sir,
it will be different.
Yes, sir. They'll all participate in the procession up to the back to Spring Grove.
And there's a look at the map. So the procession will follow Dana to northbound I-71, then 71 to the Norwood Lateral to southbound I-75. Then the procession will leave the interstate at the Mitchell Avenue exit, Mitchell to Spring Grove Avenue, and then, of course, Spring Grove Avenue to the cemetery. Dan, can you talk about what kind of planning goes into something like this?
The planning is immense, and it's involving a lot of different agencies, and you know, sadly the agency with the most experience and the largest staffing is the city of Cincinnati, and they just extended their hand and said, how can we help you? And you see them even through the processes, and we talk about all the intersections and all the streets that you pass by have to be manned by an officer to make sure the traffic is open so this procession can move through it. But then all the workings and all the setup of how do you find a venue, and where is everyone going to go? How do we get them all there? You saw the buses in this process. How are we going to get all our families there? And so there's so many pieces and so many different players in this process that you couldn't do it without the help of so many different people, and whether it's fellow agencies or different vendors or different folk, different businesses within your community to say, we can help you with this. Don't worry about that. Just, they ran out of blue ribbon in Colerain, because it was bought up and it was purchased, and the number of people that have been cutting ribbons and putting it together. Just anyone and everyone that's even with connection or without connection, there's been help.
Yeah, Haley Griggs, I think her brother is one of your Colerain Township police officers, and she and her mom started making these ribbons, and they just took a few down to the gas station, and they were gone like that, and they couldn't keep up with the demand because people wanted so much to display their thank you.
Exactly right. I don't know if it was Thursday or Friday. The word was that there was no more blue ribbon in Colerain. So you need to, okay, where do we find this blue ribbon? Where do we go? So, everybody's running in different directions, and
that really says something.
It does, but like we talked about a little bit earlier, the men and women of the police department have been so busy. I worry, when are they going to have an opportunity to take a moment to pause and mourn the loss of a good friend and a family member.
I've also noticed and heard from ladies and gentlemen who I know in the police service, they're offering their time today. They don't necessarily get paid to block these intersections, and because they still have the work to do in Cincinnati as well. So these are extra duty people.
Yes, sir.
Or maybe not even on duty, but rather just volunteering.
Right, and we've seen that in Colerain when officers came back there. I got this, so Chief said, you go ahead and cover that beat, go work with your friends and make sure that they're taken care of. And we heard that, don't worry, we'll come out and work with your guys when they're maybe their heads aren't on straight. We got your back. We'll work alongside you. We'll sit in the seat next to you to make sure that we've got this. And it's just, we know that's out there. It's just so sad that it takes a tragedy for us to remind each other how important we are.
But it's always there.
It always is.
It's always there.
It always is.
Officer Dale Woods spent his life in public service, and Local 12's Megan Mongello spoke with one of his high school friends who says even at a young age, Dale Woods knew he wanted to help others.
The assistant fire chief in Colerain Township was in the high school band. Will Mueller is the kid on the right. Next to him is his friend, the late Dale Woods, who was just now getting back into music.
Just within the past year, he started drumming again. Purchased a drum set, which he couldn't wait to tell me about, and was telling me some of the songs that he was working on in his basement.
Mueller said when Woods was only 16, he started in the Fire Explorer program. He then became a firefighter serving Colerain Township and North College Hill. He then took on a new role as a police officer, first for North College Hill, then serving Colerain Police for the past 15 years. He was also a member of the Honor Guard, spent time as an EMT and SWAT, plus was a range instructor.
When you needed something done, you needed to get something done, you needed somebody to count on, Dale was one of the names that came to mind because he was the one that would follow through to make sure that it got done. And on that Friday evening, he was following through to make sure that it got done to the last minute.
Friday, Officer Woods was directing traffic after an accident on Colerain Avenue. He was standing in the rain waiting for a utility company to fix a down pole when a pickup truck hit him. It happened right in front of Cahoot's Bar. The owner and manager are trying to make sure he's remembered.
So with all of this happening, we put blue ribbons at the crash site. We put blue ribbons on our marquee. We put a blue ribbon over on the substation handle, just so when people are driving up and down Colerain Avenue, they keep it in the back of their mind.
Other businesses have also put up signs to honor Officer Woods. They're giving back to the man who gave his life for the community.
She mentioned his music and the way that he loved to drum. He also served others by playing at church.
Yes,
he
played music at church, yes.
Yeah. I mean, this guy served in so many different capacities.
But don't you find that that's the case with so many officers?
Of course.
But they do it quietly. They don't really tell you about it. We talked about him being honored for what he did by saving that woman from the fire.
Yes.
But the last thing an officer really wants is for somebody to go, great job, you really did good today. You know, it just doesn't fit with the rest of their
No, it was humble.
being.
He was a humble servant.
Yeah.
And, you know, we talk about it, and I shared it, self-sacrificing, service above self, and that's Dale. That's Dale, and again, it represents so many, but Dale is he's a picture for that definition.
Some of his commendations, I was reading through some of his public safety experience and some of his evaluations. Loves to try new ways to get the job done, fits in well, willing to learn. I mean, this is a gentleman who had a lot of experience, but he still wanted to try new things.
Well, you know, they say you can never stop educating yourself because you'll never know what you have to face next, and Dale embraced it. Dale was one okay, let's try it.
How important is that for a police department?
Oh, it's huge because the world changed, the needs changed, the needs of the community changed, the ability to understand that and have to shift. And law enforcement, that's what most, you know, for me personally, that's what I loved about it. That it wasn't the standard job. You had to be prepared. You had to educate. And the people, you might deal the same thing, but the people make it different. The human element within that makes you have to be prepared, and you have to continue to learn and continue to understand what it means to serve within a community, and that's what we're talking about, and that's what it meant in those definitions when, you know, willing to learn, try new ways, continue to educate. That was Dale.
That's a great example for the younger officers too.
I'll tell you what's going on today is a wonderful moment for everybody to show their support for the family and thank this officer for his fine work. But I can tell you from personal experience, when your public persona, which is what's going on today, interferes with your private moments, it's tough on the family.
It is, you know, it's like, especially when you live and you work within the same community, you grew up within it's like you're always running into people, you know, you always see people, and but that again drives you to be even the more consummate professional, because, you know, you could walk into the local grocery store and there's a person that you arrested on, you know, 2 nights ago, and you're all shopping at the same store, so you better conduct your business as a human being, as a professional, because you never know when you might run into somebody. So that requires a little bit more skill and tact, but again, those weren't things that Dale worried about. The things that we understand about Dale and that we know about Dale in his life is that he was a professional, and the character of the man is evident in everything that he did. And I know that that wasn't a worry for him, because the way that he treated people was just the way he would expect people to treat him.
The golden rule.
Yeah, no kidding. And there is an effort ongoing to take care of the family now, of course, but there will be an effort that continues for years to care for his family, right?
Absolutely. The relationships don't end just because Dale is no longer with us. The family is part of the family. And, you know, there are other survivors, sadly, that have lost their spouses in the line of duty that are I've seen they're already stepping up and making sure that the family knows that there is a lifelong of relationships that are about to occur. But the family within Colerain Township will never go away for that family. Making sure that the Christmas is recognized, that birthdays are remembered, those kinds of things are important to the Colerain family, and it won't stop just because we've lost Dale. The family will still continue to be part of the greater big.
And even beyond Colerain, we just saw last week Linda Pope, who lost her husband. Officer Pope, she was instrumental in getting legislation passed at the Ohio State House to extend benefits for families like those of Officer Dale Woods, so that they would keep their health insurance. They would keep you know, the money coming in, so that they wouldn't have to suffer after they've lost this loved one.
And, you know, and Linda's a tremendous advocate for survivors and tremendous advocate for families. And, you know, it's sad that we have to know more about that. And it's sad that we have to make sure we do that. But, you know, good people take care of good people. And that's what we continue to find out.
Let's have a look at this. The officers are streaming into the CINCINNATI Center and from this parking area where Anjanette Levy is right now. But let's just have a look at how many are coming in there and what this means to the family. And they're coming from everywhere. I saw a police car set on Ontario. I don't know if that's in the States or if we're talking about Canada. Did people come from Canada?
Oh, that does not surprise me at all. That would not surprise me.
I saw one of the cars, a couple of park rangers from Great Parks of Cincinnati, Loveland. We've seen Miamisburg, Dayton, Ohio. There's Union Township pulling in right now. Literally hundreds and hundreds of police cruisers and police officers showing up to pay respects to Officer Dale Woods.
And there you see, look at all those men and women. It's incredible.
And all of those people in service who have to stand out there and get them there safely, those police officers who are working, as you mentioned earlier.
And this is a tough day for that because it's cold. You know, it's difficult to man that post for a very long time.
Right. I mean, but you saw Xavier representative look like Cincinnati Police Department out there, making sure those vehicles were set correctly. And again, there's work to be done, and there's just sacrificing. And how can I help? Yeah. How can I make sure this is done, and it's done professionally, it's done safely, and we can get done what we need to get done for Dale and his family?
We're about 8 minutes away from the doors opening at the CINCINNATI Center at Xavier University. Let's go back and check in once again with Brad Underwood and Kyle Inskeep. Gentlemen?
Yeah, Sheila, you talked about how officers from across the country are expected to be here today. Brad and I continue to see many of those officers walk here into the CINCINNATI Center. We're seeing some officials being kind of bussed in over here on a cart as well. But oftentimes we've been talking about Officer Woods as an officer, of course, as we should be. But we also have been talking about him as a father. Not too long ago, Brad, you posted a picture of a memorial card that we just got out here from another officer. And many of the photos on that were of Officer Woods with his children.
Yeah, it was just handed to us by a deputy who's over here making sure that we are safe in this area today as you talk about folks doing their part, whether it's covering Coleraine, covering the procession, or being here and making sure everyone is getting here safely inside. But yes, photos of Officer Dale Woods with his with members of his family, with his children. And just showing that other side as we've been learning quietly, but learning, you know, what he did outside of work, whether it was golf or listening to rock and roll or just those nice stories of people running into him in Coleraine Township at a grocery store or at a gas station.
And I'm sure that his children were such a large part of his life. And you can tell that he loved them so much in those pictures because his smile with them is just huge. And I know that Sheila and Rob were speaking about how the support for his family will continue for years. I know that in other instances where I've seen officers killed and they've had young children and even children that were in their teenage years, you know, the officers have showed up to take the children to their first day of kindergarten, you know, if they were super young. Or I've seen sometimes when a daughter is going to prom and her father was killed in the line of duty, they will show up with her on her prom day and take photos. So, you know, that brotherhood really does extend, and I'm sure that the support for this family will continue for many, many years to come.
And you talk about that, and we saw that with Cincinnati police officer Sonny Kim with his children's college tuition being paid for, in part because of fundraising efforts and in part because of just that greater brotherhood of people coming together and donating money to help that family when they needed help the most in a dark time for them.
Yeah, very dark time. But again, the doors here at the CINCINNATI Center are going to open officially at 11 o'clock. The service will begin at noon. And as you're taking a live look here, we're seeing a large group of officers make their way in. We're seeing a cruiser also from Fairfield, some State Highway Patrol officers as well. This is probably the largest crowd that we have seen here, Brad, since we've been out here. We've been out here since around 8:30 or 9 this morning. But obviously, as we get closer to the service time, we are expecting to see more people make their way inside.
And we see them coming together in groups. And you mentioned the shuttle. There's a golf cart over here that is about to make its way to CINCINNATI in front of the arena to join the fellow officers, fellow firefighters, dispatchers, people in this greater law enforcement family for today's service.
And I know we keep going back to this, but something that always really sticks with me is the fact that so many of these people that will be here today will have never met Officer Woods. typically don't go to a funeral of someone that you've never met. But this is one of those rare cases where people feel compelled, and rightly so, to show up and pay their respects to a man who gave the ultimate sacrifice, or made the ultimate sacrifice, I should say. He passed away protecting and serving a community that he cared so much about.
A community that he was from.
Right.
I mean, you don't get to see that often in many professions, that you're able to go back home. And that was a big point, from what I've been told, for Dale Woods to stay in the area. You know, we talk about his time in North College Hill, his time at the range with different fire departments, but Colerain was home, and that's a special kind of calling, call to duty, call to service, to not only do that job, but to make sure you're doing it in the community that you grew up in, and that it means something to you so much so that you want to protect the people around you where you grew up.
Now, as you were out there this week interviewing business owners, talking with people in
little bitty stories, because as we've mentioned, Dale Woods was not the bragging type. He didn't go out. I think at the top of my mind, you think of those pictures of him playing football with those kids in the neighborhood, just showing that human side. Hey, you know, I'm doing my job, but I see you're having fun. I want to have fun too, and let's get to know each other. And that is the ultimate community policing effort there, getting to know the people that you're protecting every night.
There you go. I think that so many people, everyone, just talked to me about how he was quiet but strong. And that was something that really stuck with me, because, you know, he was a man of few words, but still had a great impact on so many people that he worked with, that he served alongside. And people were just so appreciative of the work that he was doing for them.
And we are now, yes, it's been busy all day with students here walking around, but
right.
We are now starting to see a very big automobile presence, as well as here are two more groups.
Yeah, I don't know if we can pan over and show them
officers, first responders in their dress uniform, making their way from, no doubt, the lot that Anjanette has seen many of these cars pull into over the last hour and a half.
Yeah, and for the first time, it seems like we're actually seeing some community members that are making their way here today, which that'll obviously be a big part of this crowd. Again, we've been talking about Cintas Center holds about 10,000 people. We're not sure exactly how many people will be here for this memorial service, but I think it's safe to say that we can expect at least a couple of thousand people, and probably even more will line that procession route after the ceremony. Not everyone can obviously make it out here, but I think so many people will take a moment out of their day after this service to stand along that procession route, to just pause, reflect, pay their respects. Some will salute. We saw a lot of American flags on Saturday during this, and I was asking one of the men who brought his American flag out there. It was large, and he said he just felt compelled to do that. He thought it was the right thing, and he wanted to show respect to the family. And so it was a beautiful moment. It was blowing in the wind, and it was just something that really stuck with me. And then I'm talking about it now because it was moving, to say the least.
It was Saturday, similar conditions, although it was snowing, but we see those people will most likely line that route back to Spring Grove Cemetery and pay their last final goodbye. As we've seen, this is the third day of some kind of tribute, whether it was the public stuff Saturday, a private ceremony last night with police and fire, and again today with the funeral service.
All right, so we are now going to send it back to Rob and Cammie, but as again, we are beginning to see more people file here into the Cintas Center on Xavier campus. Rob and Cammie, back to you guys.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Cammie, nice to see you.
Thank you. It's good to see you, and you too, Dan. You know, as I was driving here today on 71, heading south, there was an accident, and it was probably 4 or 5 cars involved, and they had one lane of the interstate blocked. And here were all these officers standing out on the interstate, helping to direct traffic, helping with the accident scene. And it struck me, you know, here are guys that probably would like to be part of this service today, but they were doing their jobs because someone has to do that. That's what they do. They protect and serve. And so I felt grateful to them for that. It made me pause and think how we should all be more careful when we're around accident scenes. It also made me think about you, and you're kind enough to be here with us today to give us perspective, our viewers perspective, because I know you'd probably like to be there as well. So we appreciate it.
Well, it's an honor. It's an honor to be with you, and you know, the feedback we got from Saturday, the fact that you were able to provide a insight to so many people that couldn't be present, you know, on the street side or with them on Saturday, just it means a lot to the community, and those that can't be with us and no longer live in Cincinnati, the ability to be here. And it's just, I'm honored to be here and represent Dale and those men and women from Colerain.
It's interesting, you showed that tweet earlier from officers of the fire service who are deployed, who know what's going on today.
Yes, and they were in their own right giving tribute to Dale through the salute to the flag, and they're sending that flag back to make sure that it just you don't truly grasp the relationships and the connections that we have. And again, it's just so sad that we have to remember that at a time of loss.
You know, I know you've touched on this already, but why is it so important? And I know we know this, but if you could share with our viewers why it's so important to go through all the things we're doing this weekend, today with the service, involving so many different people. I know it's important to the family and clearly to the other officers, but why is it important to the community?
Public service is such a gift, and to conduct it and to do it professionally and to do it with great character and great conviction it deserves the moment of recognition. It deserves the fact that there was so much sacrifice associated with it, and the family needs to, when a time of that their loved one was truly doing something that was passionate to them and it meant something. It tells that family and those men and women that they work with that, you know, thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for your gift to us as a community, that you made it safe for us. And because so many people have no connection with the police, no contact with the police, but there's a calm and comfort that goes along with knowing that those men and women are out there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, holidays, it does not matter. They're on the front lines for us here in our communities, and they're here to take care of us. And it just gives that community as well an opportunity to say thank you.
Yeah, well said. And I hope that in time the family will have time to reflect on this. You know, I know that it's so raw right now, but reflect back and think about all the people, all the officers from, you know, other states, countries who came to show their respect today, and the community that came out to show their respect to. I hope the family, I'm sure they will, at some point, will be able to think about that.
I don't disagree, Cammie. In time to look back and just understand that every moment we had together, they've had a chance to learn a little bit more about Dale and see a little bit more about that family that he worked and lived with. It just is it's a sad day, but it's just a day of honor.
Well, as we approach the hour of the service, the officers are literally pouring in, both fire and police, who are here to support what's going on today and pay their respects. And we're going to check in with Anjanette Levy. She is in this enormous parking lot where they're trying to accommodate these hundreds of cars that have shown up from all over the country to take part in the activities today. Anjanette?
Hi, Rob. We are back here in front of the CINCINNATI Center, and as you can see, there are some State Highway Patrol cruisers coming in here right now. Also some cruisers from the Newport Police Department parking here in front of the CINCINNATI Center. We also have the Ross Township Fire Department. We've talked at length about how Officer Woods was not only a police officer, but he also worked in the fire service for a time. So I think we'll expect to see several fire departments sending representatives here to pay their respects to Officer Woods. We have seen these cars streaming in here since about 9 o'clock this morning. So there are a lot of police officers here. We've seen many from all around the state of Ohio. We've seen some from Indiana, also Campbell County, Kentucky, and as I mentioned, Newport. But we've also seen some officers from the Park Service, the Hamilton County Park Service, I should say. Right now we have a Harrison police cruiser coming in, and also we saw some cruisers from Ontario, and we were trying to figure out whether or not those were from Ontario, Ohio, which is in Richland County, north of where we are, in kind of near Mansfield. We couldn't tell if those were from Ontario, Ohio, or Ontario, Canada. I would assume they were Ontario, Ohio. So a very large number of police officers coming here, all in their dress uniforms, of course, to come to the funeral service for Officer Woods. So I think we could expect this parking lot to fill up a little more over the next hour or so, since those doors are opening up here. Rob?
And Jeanette, I know you're very close to the police service. I think it's surprising to a lot of people, at least it was for me, how many families are touched by the police and fire service. It is more than you would realize.
Well, there's 18,000 police departments across the United States. There's probably close to 900 just in the state of Ohio. And then being in the southwest part of Ohio with touching Kentucky and Indiana, there's just so many families out there, and they feel this. They feel this loss, and Angela shared. It hits close to home. It absolutely does, and you say a little prayer for your loved one, and you hope that you never have to do this again. We just continue to say we hope that we never experience loss in this service again, and sadly it just keeps coming back and reminding us how dangerous of a profession these fire and police services are.
Well, we've had a chance to look at what's happening outside of the CINCINNATI Center. So many different officers there, different departments represented. We want to take a look now inside to see what's happening in there.
This is where the service will take place. And sadly, it reminds me of Hedrick. Isn't that something?
It really does. No, I know. Tim Hedrick's service was here.
It was, yeah. We took, that was a moment.
You were instrumental in putting that together, and you know, it was just a very emotional time then, and here we go.
So about 10,000 people can attend today. We don't know how many there will be. These look like explorers. Would that be safe to say, Chief? Looks like it.
It looks like that. I can't tell the...
Too young to be officers.
The patch, yes, the patch on their chest, but I can't see exactly where they're from.
And I know quite a few people will be speaking. We have kind of a rundown of who they are, and maybe, Dan, you can talk about what they represent, who they represent.
Sure. You know, Chaplain Love is a chaplain that we brought to Colerain Police in 2011, and he's been asked by the family to handle the service today. And you know, a list of all the leaders within Colerain. You have Chief Mark Denny. We've heard from him as he's so professionally represented the township and the police department during this tragic time. He's a good friend. I just my heart pours out for him it's just a struggle. It's just a struggle because you have to be professional in your service, but you also know that this is your friend. And you know, President of the board Dan Unger, and other trustees, Greg Insko has been a trustee for now almost 5 years. Jeff Mills is the administrator. Just the super leadership, the opportunity to, you know, I'm sure it's going to be difficult for each one of them to put into words what this truly means. I feel for them speaking today, because it's going to be a tough piece, because this is just the final chapter in Dale's, you know, time on Earth, and it just is. It's just sad because I see this and it just reminds me that this is real.
Yeah, it is real.
You know, you want to go to sleep at night, wake up the next morning and hope it's just a dream, and you look at these this program on a page, and it tells me that there's no going back to this.
You know, Rob, if you don't mind me asking you this, when we had Tim Hedrick's service here a couple of years ago, you spoke so eloquently. What is that like, being the person who has to stand up there, look out at the crowd, and speak from your heart?
You know, it's nearly impossible. We were talking, for me anyway, we were talking a bit earlier about the fact that these are such private family moments, and the families must agree to this. This is not something that the police department thrusts upon them. They must decide that they want to participate in it. And Tim Hedrick's family was kind enough to share that moment with all of us. But the speaking for me, I mean, compared to what they're dealing with, was nothing. But it was just difficult to get through because it's so private.
Yeah.
I mean, you just are talking about your most intimate feelings, and you're doing it in front of a lot of people that you don't know, and it's difficult. And I'm sure today will be a very similar experience for these officers and administrators in the county and the people, or rather the township, the people who are going to honor Officer Woods.
Yeah, and the people who are speaking, Dan, you said all of them have some kind of connection to Dale. I mean, knew him personally. It's not just people assigned to speak, correct?
No, these are all people from within the township and the leadership, and
right.
You know, some have definitely known him longer than others. But the fact of the matter is, we're not so big in Colerain that we don't know who we are. And
sure.
You know, there's 270 employees in the township roughly, and you know their names, and you know who they are, and you know what they do, and you know, you often have that opportunity to meet and spend time with their families. So we're not so big, we can't truly understand what it means, and it just and Rob, you're exactly right. That what you're talking about, some things that just are so intimate, and so but it helps because there's so many people that just want to know a little bit more about Dale, a little bit more about Tim, and that just gives them, wow, he really was. These people were really special, and the things that we thought from an outside were truly what they were as a human being.
Well, the tributes have been pouring in from police departments and citizens, for that matter, as Officer Dale Woods is mourned. Angela Ingram talked to a woman whose family was touched by Woods' dedication, which was large.
If a picture says 1,000 words, then these photos that Heather Hibbert snapped speak volumes about the nature of Officer Dale Woods' character.
This kind of threw me off guard because I hadn't never seen anything like it, and I couldn't help but to try to snap pictures of him because it was just it was an amazing thing to me.
Late last summer, Hibbert's 2 oldest children were playing outside when Woods stopped his cruiser to toss a football with several kids in the neighborhood.
Landon was one of the kids out here that was playing with Officer Woods that day.
Even though Hibbert didn't know Woods well, it hurt to learn that he died.
It was actually the day that they showed his picture on the news. I told my mom, I jumped up, I said, I know him. Like, that's the officer that was out here tossing the football with the kids.
While the Colerain community is remembering Woods with ribbons, signs, and other support, a group of tri-state officers with the Shield have been providing support for the family.
We've been down there and, helping the family by, getting a block of hotel rooms in a nearby hospital. That way they could be close by.
The Shield helps police officers that are critically injured in the line of duty or families of officers killed in the line of duty with immediate assistance.
We're obviously going to continue to help in the future with his children and make sure that they're able to navigate this tragedy.
Woods will be remembered for his many professional accomplishments, but also for caring about the community he served.
Whether I knew him personally or I just knew him professionally, he's still a member of the family, and we want to make sure that we take care of his family.
It really touched my heart.
Well, Jeff Hirsch is now outside of Fire Station 26, and that's on Galbraith Road, and that is where Officer Woods was stationed when he was a firefighter, correct?
Correct. He was a member of, they called it back in the day, District 10, but the Galbraith Road Fire Station was his house.
Okay, and Jeff, I understand that there are other officers or firefighters there today who are staffing it so that the firefighters who are normally there could attend the service, right?
Yeah, that's the situation in I believe, all of the Colerain Township firehouses. You can see the sign back there. It says, "Condolences to the Colerain Police Department. Never forget Officer Dale Woods." Well, as was mentioned, he was also a Colerain Township firefighter before he became a Colerain Township police officer. So there's a connection with the fire department as well. This is the station that he served when he was a Colerain Township firefighter. There's nobody here right now, but as we were driving up, an ambulance pulled out, went the opposite direction, and that was a Cheviot ambulance. So I'm assuming that Cheviot is staffing this station so that the people from this station could go to the funeral service, the public service. There are other firehouses in Colerain Township, and they're being staffed by Forest Park, Morgan Township, which is out of Butler County, Springfield Township, and Glendale. Yesterday, I was at a fire. An actual fire in, I don't even remember where it was, but it was in the suburbs somewhere. It was in Silverton, right. And they had mutual aid from multiple fire departments in the surrounding area. And that's what they do in the suburbs if it's a huge fire. This is a big fire department, Colerain Township. But the suburbs help each other because the fire departments are smaller than the city of Cincinnati. And that is called mutual aid. In a sense, this is mutual aid as well, because other fire departments are stepping in to cover the runs so that the firefighters who knew Dale Woods or didn't know him but know the department and maybe know him as a police officer now can go and take part in the service. I was over at Dana in Clinton Springs a couple hours ago when the procession went by, and there were all sorts of Colerain Township police cars, Colerain Township fire trucks. So I'm assuming that these other departments are bringing their own vehicles over because they're familiar with their own vehicles instead of using Colerain Township vehicles. As I said, there was a Chevy ambulance that I believe was stationed right here, at least temporarily. I believe it was also when one of the Cincinnati firefighters who was killed, it was either Darrell Gordon or Oscar Armstrong. I believe firefighters from Columbus came down and staffed the city of Cincinnati firehouses on that funeral day. So the concept of mutual aid goes way beyond just fighting fires. It goes with fighting grief as well, and that's why they do this. So I'll throw this back to you, and we'll try to hang around here, I guess, a little bit longer to see if anybody comes back from a run. But that is what they do out here. They take care of each other in a lot of different ways, at a fire scene, at a crime scene, and also for a funeral. Back to you.
And thank you, Jeff. Dan, you are nodding your head along with everything that Jeff was just saying.
You're exactly right. You know, sadly, we had the experience of Robin and Brian's passing in 2008, and they bring their own engines, their own squads. They work with their own houses, so they can just go and do the job and serve the community in every way possible to make sure that the folks from Colerain can be there and be present for Dale and Dale's family and each other, and that service is in the law enforcement as well.
Mm-hmm. And it's not like they're unfamiliar either, because this interaction, this mutual aid that Jeff was talking about, happens literally every day, right? There's backup. You trust them as much as you trust the guy in your force.
Absolutely, because things happen and there's needs within the community and you've got to serve it. And so there's mutual aid relationships with North College Hill, with Mount Healthy, with Green Township, with Whitewater, with all these different communities, Fairfield, Springfield Township and Forest Park. I didn't want to leave anybody out, but they just on a daily basis, they're engaging in whether they're coming into Colerain or Colerain's traveling into their communities, they're helping each other out to make sure each community is properly taken care of.
How is it that you're allowed to operate in another jurisdiction legally?
Well, and we would sign mutual aid agreements on an annual basis within law enforcement. So if the call comes out, we have the right and the responsibility to come out and serve. That's just, we would have one within the law enforcement service, and there's one within the fire and EMS service as well.
Officer Woods really was the definition of a first responder working for the police department. He worked as a firefighter, an EMT part-time. How common is that among officers or firefighters that they kind of switch over?
It's, I can only speak from my, almost 30 years of experience. There's not much.
Really?
There's not much. You find one or two, but usually there's something within us that drives us
to serve.
To serve in one, law enforcement or within the fire and EMS service, because, there's a lot of smart folks that travel in that fire and EMS service because of that, and then transition to that medic role, because the things the services that are provided to us on the street level, in our homes, the quality of medical care that's being provided by, at least I know from our Colerain medics, is one that makes me say I'm never moving, because these people save lives. And, I get it, but to find someone that loved it enough to do it for as long as they've done, that's just not common.
Boy, and you're right, the quality is there. I mean, the accolades for the Colerain Township Fire Department are many, as they are for the police. Now, I also remember a time when Colerain Township's police was, if I'm not mistaken, years ago, the county was somehow involved in Colerain Township policing, were they not?
They were. I mean, there was the police department was disbanded in January of 1986.
Yes, I remember that.
And I was in the military at the time, but the community wanted and told their leadership that we want our police department to be back, and Colonel Ray Hoffbauer, formerly of the sheriff's office, had a tremendous role in making sure that the law enforcement was brought back and worked with the community group to say we want to do it professionally, and in turn, since 1987, the police department's returned to service and grown and continue to provide a professional level of service, and it's just that 30 years has gone by pretty quick since it was returned. But the men and women who choose to serve out here out in Colerain are outstanding young men and women.
Well, we continue to watch the officers, first responders file into the CINCINNATI Center, where a service will get underway at about noontime. It's packed, and it's just growing. The crowd is growing. They can accommodate, about 10,000, Rob?
Yeah. There are seats, I'm told, in today's configuration for about 10,000 people. CINCINNATI was, frankly, kind to do this because they're busy this time of year with basketball, and they have change things in the arena from basketball to accommodate today's activities. Yeah. So we always found, and still do, find Xavier and Cintas very accommodating.
Helpful.
They care.
Well, again, we are a community. Mm-hmm. You know, we might have our, 47 different communities within the Hamilton County region, but we come together as an entirety, and you are a part of our community, and it's just it's an honor to be able to join you and help tell Dale's story.
And we sure appreciate it.
And I've seen through the video some of the Colerain firefighters, and I've seen, Dave Pickering is now an assistant chief out of Westchester and a longtime captain in service to Colerain Township, talking with some Colerain firefighters and captains from the house, and it just brings back that you might go away, but you always come back to home, and seeing those guys engage and take care of each other, that's just sadly that's what today is, to remember Dale and to remember each other and make sure we've got our arms wrapped around each other, and this is tough.
We're talking about his public service. He was also, when you list what he's done, it's phenomenal. Mm-hmm. He was also a communications. He was a dispatcher.
He was. He worked for 3 years for the Hamilton County Communications Center, which, again, is on that front line, taking that call and then communicating that out to the officers, and then being on the other side waiting for that. That we've talked about. That's just an incredibly difficult job that, you take those phone calls from that, in that moment of need from whoever that is, and then you got to put that out to those officers and those firefighters and hope that everything's going to be okay. That, and the men and women that serve there are just tremendous professionals, and, we have one of the best in Hamilton County within a long radius, whether it be the state of Ohio or the region. The quality of the work, and again, the thing that, their leader, Andrew Knapp, provides, it just is outstanding. And, we don't give them enough credit for the quality of work that they do. But again, he served there as he was trying to find his way and figure out where his best opportunity to serve was. Again, I think it was about 3 years he served at the Communications Center.
Wow, he really did it all. We want to kind of set the scene once again out at the CINCINNATI Center. Kyle Inskeep and Brad Underwood are standing by out there. Gentlemen?
Yeah, Cammie, as we get closer and closer to the memorial service beginning here at the CINCINNATI Center, again, it's expected to begin around noon, we continue to see officers and just community members file into the CINCINNATI Center here. And I think it's safe to say that it's a very somber mood, even as we see these large groups of police officers walk here into the CINCINNATI Center. No one's really saying anything.
No, and you're not seeing a lot of joking or smiles. People are this is a very serious moment for the public who's coming here, but also all these officers. And as Anjanette was talking about all the different cruisers from around Ohio that she is seeing, we're seeing them walk in. We just saw a couple of groups as well as some state troopers who were walking in from off the street, as we also see golf cart shuttles bringing people in from who knows where that are parking to be here today.
Yeah, a large crowd expected to be out here. We know the CINCINNATI Center can hold 10,000. We're expecting maybe, and this is just a guess at this point, a couple of thousand, maybe more than that. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw more than that, because so many people want to be here today to pay their final respects. So many people braved the elements on Saturday just to stand outside and line the processional route for just a glimpse of the hearse that was carrying Officer Woods' body. So I wouldn't be surprised today if we saw even more than a couple of thousand people here. In our last hit, we talked about how even more people probably will line the processional route after this, because, when this type of tragedy hits a community, so many people want to be part of the memorial service, just to show the family that they are there for them. And I think we've seen that. You've seen that the last week or so when you've been there in Colerain on the ground speaking with people. There's been that outpouring of love and support for this family.
There has, whether it's installing a blue light bulb on your porch or tying that ribbon. And it's interesting that Mr. Mullay mentioned they ran out of blue ribbon. When I was out there on Wednesday, I stopped in a couple fabric shops and they didn't have any yet. So you had the big box stores, and just to know that in that community that blue ribbon ran out of stock is a testament to how this community is coming together for Officer Woods and for the department. And we're going to see that here today with this ceremony, because, as we've mentioned, this is not just we're not talking about a police officer, we're talking about a firefighter. And as you guys were mentioning, he pretty much did it all.
Right.
And looking at the list, some other things we left off: a dog warden, a police officer, North College Hill, Lincoln Heights, the dispatcher. I mean, the list goes on, and the community is not going to forget that. All these different jobs that he had, maybe the way he touched someone's life, as we see video here of the gas station, the Ameristop there, in Coleraine. This woman and her daughter, stepson, stepbrother, is a police officer with Coleraine Township, and she just thought this is something she needed to do. They'd make these ribbons, and the people who came into the gas station at the Ameristop there would take them home and wear them throughout the week.
Incredible. And when you say touch someone's life, that took me back to Saturday. We were out there covering the procession. I was speaking to a man, and I said, what brought you out here today? And he said that he was part of the first class of the Citizens Academy there in Coleraine, and Officer Woods was a part of that. And he said when he heard the news, he instantly remembered that Officer Woods had come and spoke to them at one of the classes. Didn't have a lot of interaction with him, but he said he was so kind and he was so caring that he wanted to be there on Saturday. Just because of that one brief interaction, he felt compelled to come out there on Saturday. And I thought that was so incredible, and it really speaks to the character and the impact that Officer Woods had on that community. And I'm sure that's not an isolated story. I'm sure you've heard stories just like that.
It's not just Saturday. It was the vigil the Monday before. It was today, lining the procession. It doesn't matter which day it was. If something was happening, if you lived in Coleraine, or even if you didn't, you feel there's no other place you want it to be. And I think we are going to see a very big turnout here to that fact.
Yeah, and a lot of these officers will likely be joined by their spouses, and that was something that was really stressed to us over the weekend. We saw a lot of wives of police officers that were down there for the procession, and I was speaking to them about that, and they said, this is really a family profession. The husband or the wife may be a part of the police force, but law enforcement is a family. And so they all come together during these times. And I spoke with a couple of people along that route on Saturday. I think we have a portion of that interview we want to play for you right now.
With what's been going on last couple of weeks, 11 dead in 5 days or something like that, it's just no one understands the life of a child who has a police officer. And it's honestly kind of tough. People just don't know.
Proud of this community?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Seeing how everyone comes together during times like this just makes me proud to be part.
It's hard to come out here to see this because, they're out there protecting us every day of their lives, and I imagine it's hard for them to do that. So it's hard on both me and my wife about it.
It's very hard, and hopefully with everybody surrounding them, they will heal in time.
I know earlier Rob, in their coverage at the station, was talking about the goal is to come home every day. Unfortunately, that was not the case for Officer Woods a couple of weeks ago. But it just, when I heard them say that, it really struck me. Because these officers don't know what they're getting into on a daily basis. But they continue to go to work every day because they feel compelled to. They feel called to this cause of public service.
And while that may be a thought of family members, as Mr. Malloy was saying, you can't think like that, and you don't, and that's how you approach the job every day, one step at a time.
There you go. And I think as we were just in this, we saw another group of officers heading here into the CINCINNATI Center. We're continuing to see. I see two more about to file by us, but as we just said earlier, the mood is very somber. Again, only a few words being spoken by these individuals. We haven't seen any smiles, understandably so, but it just underscores what we're expecting here during this memorial service.
Well, and quickly before we go back to the station, we do expect to hear from Cincinnati enforcement community of Officer Dale Woods. Hope to bring that to you live, but we will be talking with him sometime, we're told, before this service begins at noon.
And that just underscores that this does not only affect the Coleraine Police Department, but really all of the departments in this area. All right, Rob and Cammie, we will send it back to you guys, but then once we do get in touch with Chief Isaac, we'll be sure to try to bring that to you live.
That sounds good. Kyle, Brad, thanks so much.
At the Cincinnati Police Museum, volunteers are retired officers. They've been collecting history on officers from all over our region who have died while serving, like Officer Woods.
Dale was born June 8th, 1972. He attended Coleraine Junior High School and Coleraine High School. This is a guy who was in a fire explorer program for the for Colerain Township, comes out of Colerain High School with just an obviously burning desire to serve. At one time, he's working as a dispatcher, as a part-time police officer, and as a firefighter, all at one time. We are very much preservers of history. That is our main function. Like Dale, you know, he played drums in high school. He was a fire explorer. All those kinds of little tidbits that are not only interesting to people, but they also show that he was a human being and had a life. He wasn't just this mannequin wearing a uniform.
Oh, this wall is the main reason that we're here. The museum was founded on the idea that we would be a memorial for officers killed, the officers that gave their lives for their community. Well, right now we've got about 40, I believe, 40 or 50. I lost count. But in the area that we represent, we've got over 205. And our goal is to get all of them on a wall at some point. Well, I was on the police department, a member of the police department. Our department lost about 15 people. And you kind of put that to the back of your mind. But every time we lose another person, it's like tearing a scab off a wound. It comes to the forefront again. And the whole museum is built around this wall.
That's exactly what we're trying to do, is breathe life into the officers who died before us. We want the people to see what they were, you know, what life they had. That was snuffed out. But that's what we try to portray, is how sudden that life is gone because he was serving us, the people.
During that piece, Dan, you said you recognized the uniform of Officer Jerry Grayson, and you spoke at his funeral. Talk a little bit about him and what that experience was like.
Jerry was unique. He was just a tremendous. Again, we talk about high character people.
Sure.
And, Jerry didn't take a sick day for more than 27 years. Wow. You know, he was truly committed to the men and women who worked on the squad. He was the shift supervisor. He wanted to do it. He knew it from an early age. Went to college, and boom, he was going to be a police officer. And you know, but we saw in the picture earlier when I spoke of, you know, Assistant Chief Pickering and Captain Witherby, but his brother Joe is in the fire service. He's a member of Colerain Township Fire and EMS, and you know, that family again. And his brother Andy was a police officer in Green Township. So you know, we talk about this legacy and this commitment, this connection within the region, within our families. And you know, but Jerry was, you know, 27 years, and he gets cancer and diagnosed with cancer, and he never gets to, you know, fulfill the career that he wanted to fulfill. And you know, he's a tremendous family. But again, I saw his uniform there in that museum piece, and it was on display. And you know, there was a picture of Dale with Jerry at that event in the wheelchair, and just, you know, giving Jerry the business. He used to give Jerry's. He just used to tease, and it just brings back so many memories of those relationships.
And you said when you spoke at the funeral, the family was sitting right there in front of you, in the row right in front of you, and that had to be so difficult.
Right, during the FOP service, the Fraternal Order Police Service, and I had the honor to speak and to look at his father and look at his mother, and you realize just to let him know your son was great.
Yeah.
You know, your son was a tremendous representation of you and the way that you raised him, and he was honored. He took it as a privilege to serve, and we're proud to be his friends. You know, we're honored to be his friends, and we do the same things you're going to hear from, especially from those that were the closest to him. When Chief Denny speaks, it's going to be as a friend, and that chief thing's going to be part of it. But Chief Mark's going to talk more about being the friendship and the relationship as just human beings, more so than being the boss, so to speak. Yeah.
You talked about the ribbing, which is part of the police service and the fire service, because it relieves some of the tension, you know, and some of the stress that you guys are under every day. So guys kid around sometimes just to let loose a bit.
Because if you don't laugh, you're going to cry, right?
Well, that's what you hear is, yeah, if you don't laugh, you don't have a way to relieve the stress, it's going to hit you. So we give each other the business a little bit. We have fun with each other, but it's all in good fun, and it's all about family.
All right,
take care of each other.
Let's check in once again out of the CINCINNATI Center with Anjanette Levy. Anjanette?
Cammie, we're here in front of the Cintas Center, really probably on the backside of the Cintas Center, I should say, where all of the police officers from the area and some from out of town in the Ohio and Indiana areas have come to park. We've seen some officers just pull in from Bexley and from Whitehall, also from Urbana. So we have police officers from all over the state of Ohio here, along with officers from Indiana and some from Kentucky. We saw Newport and Campbell County police officers pulling in just a little while ago. So obviously, anytime something like this happens, you have people in the police and fire service coming together. They all want to come here to pay their respects. This could happen to any one of them any day of the week. You just never know what's going to happen, and I guess when your time is up, as they say. So a lot of people coming to pay their respects to Officer Woods, obviously to show support for his family. We also have a fire truck coming in right now, actually 2 fire trucks, since Officer Woods was a firefighter, but I don't think it would matter even if he hadn't been a firefighter. I think that, the police and fire service are jobs where you go to work every day. You know you're potentially in danger. You don't focus on that too much, because if you did, I think it would make it very difficult to do your job. But this is Franklin Township coming in right now, parking, coming around here to park. But they all know that each day, they could face a very dangerous situation and something terrible could happen. So it's a very difficult job. Carlisle Fire Department, that's in the Warren County area. So each day, all of these people know that, it could potentially be their last, but they do this job, they feel a duty to serve, and they come together in times of tragedy like this. I think that the police and the fire service, you sometimes see them out on scenes. We go to all of these fire scenes or crime scenes, and they're out there together. You see them kind of joking around. There's a little bit of it's a strange competition. I don't know if I'm describing it right, and I'm sure Dan Malloy can speak to this better than I could, but, there's a little bit of competitiveness there, and you see them joking around with each other. But I think in times like these, you really see them come together and show support for one another. Cammie, back to you.
All right, Anjanette, thank you so much. And as you look at those police cars, fire trucks, they must number in the hundreds by now.
Yeah, it's kind of breathtaking.
It is.
But it just demonstrates the spread of the family.
We'll give you a look inside the Cintas Center in just a moment. We're about 20 minutes away from things beginning on the inside. I'm struck by the fact that Officer Woods was a young man. This is not a man who did his whole career.
Right.
He's, exactly 46 years old, or I think that's right, if I'm not mistaken. It's incredible.
And I'm looking here at the list of awards and commendations, and it just is mind-boggling. All of the many things that he did and accomplished. He won the Top Cop Award from the Southwest Ohio organization MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Among so many other different things. Chief's Commendation. He was a very accomplished officer.
He was. He never shied away from those moments that may make others pause. He was, if he saw it, he ran in there. And you saw that, he received a Medal of Valor for going into a structure fire before he was still at North College Hill, right when he was going to be coming to Colerain with the Colerain officer Joe Hendricks back in 2003, and it just never. That fire service allowed him the ability to serve in different ways where maybe other people didn't understand what it meant and know how to properly handle it. Yeah. He did that on 2 occasions and was able to take care and maybe save the life of someone that if it had just been another officer, maybe we wouldn't have been able, we weren't prepared to do it. So Dale was accomplished, but he was put in place to serve, and he definitely made an impact.
We talk about the massive amount of danger that's involved in the police department and fire department. Where do you put that when you go to work in the morning? Do you put it in a box? Obviously you know what's going on. You know it's a threat. You train for it all the time. You carry a weapon, but there has to be some place you park that in order to be able to do your job.
You respect it. You respect it, and you know your skill. You know your ability, but you respect it, and you understand that if you did your job in the way that you're taught that there's danger zones and things like that. We would never get close to anyone. We'd never talk to them. We'd be standing outside of our car engaging people while they're still standing on their front porch. That's just not the way you can do business. But, some point in time, some folks are overwhelmed by that. And the inherent dangers that go in, like I always say, you can pick up the phone, and if you want to hurt a police officer, you just call 911. We'll come right to we'll park in your driveway, we'll come to your front door. So the reality is that you have to respect that and then prepare and train. But we talk about this. We train for a lot of different scenarios, but this traffic thing just concerns me because, well, there's traffic stops, disabled motorists, traffic crashes. How are we thinking differently? What's our challenge moving forward in all of law enforcement to say, is there a better way? Are there smart people out there that can help us figure out how we can better protect the men and women on those scenes? Because there's just too many examples. And again, we heard it this morning from Northbrook, Illinois. We don't know all the facts, but there's a trooper trying to do right, and he's struck and killed. And it just there's something else that we can do. And like I said, there's smart people in the world. We got to figure out that, because this isn't your normal training structure. Like, how do we talk about scene management and things of that nature, but how do we take what's happened, learn from it, and make sure that we're safer moving forward?
And right along those same lines, I've heard you say that Dale was someone who loved to try new ways to get the job done. What do you mean by that?
Well, Dale he always loved to push the envelope, so to speak. He was, again, you don't do that as an FTO, as an investigator, as a member of the SWAT team, he's always pushing, because those different responsibilities challenge to educate you. You challenge yourself to think differently. If you're an FTO, you better know your craft, because there's a young man or woman sitting next to you that needs to be impart the wisdom to be a good, solid police officer. And the same, whatever your role is, and Dale took them on, the firearms instructor, the range instructor. Those things he loved being able to make sure that the men and women he worked with were prepared to do their duty. And that's just, he never shied away from the challenge.
You also talked about engaging the customer, the person who's calling you for help. And policing has changed over the years. When I was a kid, it was very personal. You often knew the cop on your beat. You had an officer in your school. And then there was a time when that pulled back, when officers were in the car all the time. They didn't get out to deal with individuals. And I think the lessons learned then are why we're going back old school now, and you were on foot a lot more. You were next to the people you're taking care of. You're interacting on a very personal level, because knowing them gives you better ability to help them.
Well, I'm going to use this word, relationships.
Yeah.
When we stand in the front of the room and tell you that to be quiet and we know everything is a way that, I think what you're speaking of, we're the smart people. You be quiet, because we're going to tell you how we're going to do our job. We learned very quickly that how do you work within a community if you don't have trusting relationships to understand how to better serve them?
Yeah.
So you can talk and know that we have to work together to properly police and professionally police your community. And those things, you're going to give us information if you trust us. You're going to help us understand what's important to you as a community if you trust us to share that. If we're not going to listen to you, why are we going to bother? And I think that's what we've transitioned. I know that that's a significant issue and a significant practice for Colerain Police and Chief Denny. So that community policing is true, and Dale represented that, as we saw from some of those pictures.
And you also have, if I'm not mistaken, Colerain Township began this program with the heroin epidemic, where when you have a call, you then match that person who is troubled at the moment with someone who's going to give them help.
Absolutely.
And that originated in your township.
That's correct, sir. I mean, the ability to share and let those families and the survivors of an overdose know that there's people that care about them. And we're going to problem solve this, and we're going to get you and provide you access to treatment so you can have a future, and you're not alone in it.
And that works hand in hand with what you're talking about, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Absolutely.
And the success rate has been enormous.
It has been, and it's powerful to see the replication across the country with communities and police and fire departments working together to figure out how to better serve and save lives. Because ultimately we're talking about people and we're talking about lives, and we're treating them with respect, humanity, and a little bit of compassion. We can get you through this terrible situation you're in, and let those families know that there are people that care about them. And as a law enforcement officer and as a paramedic, firefighter, that those positions within the community are part of this caring team. And some people look at you like, why do you care this much?
Yeah.
But we do, and we're here for you. And I think that tells something to people that are involved that we're going to be okay. We might make this thing, and that gives them a little bit of hope, where yesterday they had none.
Well, I watch the interaction as a reporter traveling with police officers, sometimes in their car, and watch how they treat someone who I would have assumed there was going to be more harsh treatment, because this person's attacking them, calling them names and the like, and the level of respect
and professionalism.
I don't understand how you do it, frankly.
I don't either.
You're reserved enough to be able to deal with the moment without allowing your emotions to run over.
Well, we always say there's a professional at every scene, and that's you. And you conduct yourself as a professional, and you demonstrate what professional look like. We're human.
Yeah.
We absolutely have moments of humanity. Sometimes we say things that we shouldn't say, but we are human, and we have to remember that the professional at that scene is us, and we have to represent that, because that is what we expect back. And sometimes your demeanor can bring someone down who's yelling and screaming at you, like, they're not yelling at me. You know, that's right. I'm trying to realize that we can talk calmly, and I'm going to listen to you, but we don't need to yell and scream.
Yeah.
And sometimes it works. Many times it works.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't, and those things occur, but the nature of the business is to serve. You know, there's a protect and a serve part, and we have to do that, and they're prepared. And this communication skills of our men and women who are serving in law enforcement across the country, it's something that's very important.
Yeah, and the training, I'm sure, is extensive.
It is, absolutely. But that voice that you have, that presence as an officer, people look at that and they make determinations and how you conduct yourself and how you walk in the door. Do you walk in? Do you conduct yourself as a professional? Like I said, as a professional, you do your business, and you'd be surprised the results that you get.
Officer Woods was good at it too, wasn't he?
Absolutely, yes, sir, he was.
Yeah,
he was.
And if you just happen to be joining us, in just about 15 minutes, the service for Officer Dale Woods will take place at the CINCINNATI Center, and Kyle Inskeep and Brad Underwood are standing by outside right now. Guys?
Yeah, and Cammie, as we get closer to the start of this memorial service, we are seeing fewer people make their way in, but really, for the last hour or so, we have been seeing members of the law enforcement community come together in large groups walking inside. Just everyday community members also here to pay their respects today as well. And I've kind of been blown away by the large numbers of officers that we've seen here, really from all across the tri-state, even outside of the state as well.
Yeah, I think it really hit me the last time we heard from Anjanette Levy, who's not too far from where we are, where all the officers are parking. And from when they first started arriving, maybe 10 o'clock, until where that was just that first line in that parking lot, to now where it is full. Hundreds of officers here to join in this service that, as you mentioned, just about to start here very shortly.
And some of those officers were part of a separate procession that really wasn't part of the procession carrying the hearse, or wasn't the hearse that was carrying the body of Officer Woods, but they kind of filed in here about an hour and a half ago with their lights on, and it was a beautiful moment as they, made their way to that parking lot. Obviously, it was very somber, but it was just nice to see them coming through here and paying their respects as well.
Yeah, coming through like a procession, lights on but sirens off as they gathered. Some as far as the Cleveland area, Columbus, Dayton. Coming in here as we continue also to see that golf cart shuttle that we see a lot of people wearing suits. There's kind of a shield on it. It's hard to tell who's inside some of these, but a lot of people, we do expect, thousands to be here today because of the impact not only that Officer Woods had in his community, but as we've mentioned, his time with police, with fire, with dispatch, dog warden in different communities, Lincoln, North College Hill.
And around his badge, kind of showing that he and the rest of his department is in mourning in light of this unfortunate incident. I'm sure that the other officers here today will have that as well. That's something we typically see during these officer funerals. There will be so many formalities that we will see today. Oftentimes you will see the officers file by the casket, which is a very emotional moment. Each of them kind of getting their own opportunity to say a final word to this fallen officer that many of them didn't even know, but they still are out here today to remember and honor his life.
And I even saw it last night at a fire in Paddock Hills, not too far from here. It was a 4-alarm fire. You had 100 firefighters there, and a lot of the engines had ribbons on them, had flags on them, the thin blue line or the purple line flag, as they continue here in Cincinnati to show support for Officer Woods and his family. And we were talking earlier, we do expect Chief Elliot Isaac to address the media here ahead of the service today for Officer Dale Woods, and he is just now pulled up, touching to just the wide range of impact this has.
Exactly. This doesn't only impact the Colerain Police Department, but obviously having an impact on so many departments. So he's walking over, getting in place, and as soon as he's ready to take the podium here and kind of address us, we'll be sure to bring that to you live. He's walking over, so let's set up here so we can bring
I think he is, Chief Elliot Isaac of the Cincinnati Police is now going to address the media ahead of the funeral for Officer Dale Woods. Let's take a listen.
Okay. You know, this is just that sad, tragic occasion where we've lost a member of that line. Someone who has made the decision in his life to be someone to stand on that line, and we mourn his loss.
What do you know about what's going to happen inside? Have you been privy to the line of speakers?
Not much, but I know that we will hear from some of his fellow officers. We'll hear from Chief Denny, and they will express their heartfelt loss for someone who gave so much to so many.
Can you speak a little bit about, we've heard from Colerain Police, Colerain Fire Department, but really the entire law enforcement community is hurting today. Give us a sense of what your men and women are feeling today.
Absolutely. Whenever we lose someone in the police or fire service, we all feel that personally. We know the sacrifice that someone in this profession goes through, and to lose one of them in the line of duty is a tremendous loss. And we want to be here to support and help in any way that we can.
Chief, what have you started this morning, the new one. What do you tell new recruits about the line of duty death like this and the risks that they're undertaking?
You know, I spoke to the recruit class today as they kicked off their day, and I wanted them to be mindful of the draping of our badge that we wear in memory of those that have fallen in the line of duty, that this is something that will be memorable for them. They will remember this when they started their law enforcement career. It was on a day that we mourned the loss of one of our brother officers.
What is, in 2015 it was something now 2019, it's Officer Dale Woods, and they're doing two totally different things. And I think that illustrates the breadth of what a police officer does when he serves in the police.
Absolutely, and the manners in which we lose so many, it still hurts. It's in the line of duty. Something that we think investigating a traffic accident, setting up or taking care of a traffic scene, and then to see someone lose their life in that fashion, it hurts. It hurts deeply.
For the family of the officer, they really never know that.
Absolutely. And that was one of the charges that we gave our new recruits this morning, is to remember those who support you in this work that we do, to thank them, to always be mindful of that, because they share this with us. We're not alone in this. Our families, our friends, our loved ones, and the people that we serve, we're not in this alone. All right. Thank you.
Let's talk about support. Long after today, it's unique with the police and fire service. The family will continue to receive support.
They will, and the law enforcement community will wrap our arms around their family. They'll be remembered. They'll be supported. His family will need a lot of support in the coming days. To lose someone, as tragic as this, it hurts. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Just there hearing from Cincinnati Police Chief Elliot Isaac as he gets ready to make his way inside. You know, talking about the brotherhood and the support that he had to tell his recruit class, the new recruit class, it started today. Remember, you are joining this brotherhood on a day we are honoring, remembering, burying a fellow officer, and to be mindful of the career and the life they are now entering.
Yeah, saying this is a moment that they will remember. All right, so Rob and Cammie, we're going to send it back to you guys as we are just about 4 minutes away from the expected start of this memorial service.
All right, Kyle, Brad, thank you. And we want to take a look inside the CINCINNATI Center, where the service should begin very shortly. And we do know that we have someone on the piano, Sharon Wagers. She is the wife of a retired Laughlin police officer. She's playing the piano there as sort of the final people start to file in.
Yeah, I'll be surprised, frankly, if it starts right at the top of the hour, because there's still a whole lot of people to come in. And from that higher camera, you can see they're holding the front seats for family and, I'm assuming, Colerain Township staffers and the fire department. There you get a good look at the number of people who are yet to file in.
And we were talking about the family. You said, Dan, that they're in a reception area right now, kind of waiting. I'm sure they'll be among the last to come in to the service. What are these moments for them like? Do they have someone assigned to them to help them?
Well, as a matter of practice, the family is going to have a liaison between the department and them, so there's a communication and an understanding of what's happening. So there's someone that they know who to speak with. The department knows who to inform them. So there's a relationship there, so they can ask questions and get answers on both sides. So if the family has questions, there's someone that can go to the leadership and command, the chief, and those folks responsible for the planning and preparation and get answers. So there's always, you know, a representative for the department that's assigned to spend time and be the liaison for the families.
Are there family members of officers involved with taking care of things like food and other needs the family has during these times?
The township and their employees and families have all been part of the behind the scenes getting the work. I know the ribbons were being made for a gathering this evening, and the preparing the food preparation and who's going to be there to receive that, so all these different pieces are coming together behind the scenes, and it's a way to give back and a way to say thank you when sometimes you just don't know what to do. You're just trying to let them know that you're there for them. So how can I help? And it's just a way of giving and showing that they care about Dale and his family.
So some of the people who would like to be here today are doing that instead to support the family.
Yes, sir. They're taking on little roles like that to better be available, so those that truly feel like we need them to be there are there. So it's just again, there's sacrifice in that too. But that's why, again, having the opportunity to share this with the audience is powerful.
And we appreciate so much you being here to share your perspective, because I know there are so many people at home watching who maybe wish they could be there, but for whatever reason they can't. And so it's really helpful to have you here to kind of talk us through this. As we look at the pictures of some of the different people, the officers who are there in attendance, I noticed, a few of them, of course, are talking to one another, saying hi, but quite a few of them are sitting quietly, stoically. I can only imagine what they're thinking.
I agree, because I think those thoughts are going through my mind too. It's just memories of Dale and time spent and conversations and interactions that were at the moment lighthearted or serious in the course of business. But you're just taking a moment to reflect and realize that we've lost someone that's very close to us.
Mm-hmm. So for those of you just joining us, we're waiting on the services to begin at CINCINNATI Center. They were scheduled for noon. That's not going to happen. They're running a little bit behind. Essentially, we learned that the township is closed for today.
Yes, sir.
But it's important for those of you who live in the community to know you still have coverage.
Absolutely.
Because the police officer will come when you call 911, as will fire.
Yes, sir. That is exactly correct. And we could say thank you to those men and women from these outlying communities that said, we've got you. We'll be there. And just again, a tremendous show of appreciation for Dale's service. And then Chief Isaac said it correctly. We wrapped our arms around each other, and that's exactly what they're doing today to ensure that the men and women from Colerain can be there together with Dale and Dale's family.
So these other communities have come into Colerain Township and are staging, waiting for a call, right?
Yes,
I mean,
sir.
it's not like they're going to,
nope.
They're not going to deploy from North College Hill.
No, they are in the houses in Colerain. From the fire perspective, the officers are patrolling in the beats, and they're all working to make sure that Colerain's covered while, we have an opportunity to honor Dale.
I know you've spoken over the last few hours about Dale himself, Dale the man. Share with our audience, if you would, a little bit more about him. I know he had 3 children, like play golf, right? I mean, give us a sense of who Dale was.
Dale's a quiet guy.
Really?
Dale, he'd come in, he was all businesslike, he was a consummate professional. His uniform was absolutely squared away. He was proud of his boots were shined, his leather was, everything about Dale said professional. And you knew when he went out there you could trust him. From a leader's perspective, I never worried about Dale not doing the right thing. Dale not treating our community any way except what was expected of him as a true professional, as a human being, understanding. And again, I'm not saying anything that's not being represented from the conversations that your reporters are having with folks just on the street, or the pictures that we've seen of Dale in the course of his service, the meeting with the children and throwing. He didn't do that because he thought someone was filming him or take a picture of him. Right. He did it because he wanted to engage the children. You see pictures of him talking to Cub Scout groups. Well, Dale he loved his job. Yeah. He absolutely loved the job that he did, and every opportunity to do that was one that he just relished. But again, he was quiet. He went out and he worked his beat. He made his traffic stops. He did his job. It didn't matter what responsibility Dale did. He did it with passion. He wanted to make sure that he did it correctly because he understood what that meant to those that he was serving, whether it was a community or a fellow officer. He wanted to make sure he was right and he was correct in his actions.
And a great family man as well.
He was proud. You'll see this. You saw those pictures, and you see him with his children and his 3 children, his 2 daughters, and his son. He was proud, and we talk about sharing the successes of his officers. He also loved to share the successes of his children, and that's something that, as a parent, we love to do. But Dale was no different than the rest of us. We're just, again, we're human beings. We have a job. The job that we chose, the profession that we chose, was one of service.
And it looks like they're asking people to take their seats now. Maybe the final people, the family, the folks from Colerain will be coming in now to fill up those seats up front, and we should get started shortly, I would think.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. It's still going to take some time to be able to fill that many seats before they can get underway. But when they do get underway, you'll hear every minute of what happens today at the CINCINNATI Center to honor Officer Woods. Also, what's happening today on Channel 12 and local12.com as we're streaming this. So it's interesting. I'm getting texts from people around the world, as a matter of fact, as is the chief, who are able to be a part of this from so very far away. And that's just part of today's technology, which is a wonderful thing. Just as those pictures you described of Officer Woods throwing the football with those kids in the neighborhood was taken by a woman with her cell phone. Mm-hmm. Yes. So we are able today to see so much more than we used to be able to see.
Better.
Yeah, because everybody's a photographer now.
Right, you're exactly right.
So they're filling up the podium. We're seeing quite a few faces up there. Dan, talk about who all we will hear from, who you see on the podium there. Well, I guess we're going to pause here for just a moment. Dan, I'm sure you recognize quite a few of these people filing in.
Every one of them.
And as you mentioned, all from Colerain, whether they serve on the police force or serve with the township?
Yes. Yes, they're all the families of the officers right now.
Chief, who do you see there that you recognize?
You have all the department heads, fire, administration, EMS, the road department, the planning and zoning, and township administrator, township finance director, and the trustees.
And we'll hear from many of them, including Chief Denny.
Correct.
From what we know, the family's being held in an anteroom on the floor level in the Cintas in order to give them just a little separation and some private time. They probably will be the last to take a seat.
And Dan, as we watch families of the officers, I'm willing to bet that most of them, you couldn't keep them away. They just feel the need to be there, would you say?
Oh, from being a part of that family, you're absolutely right. There's no place that they would rather be.